Let's get ready to rumble!
Yeah, that would work.
It would be beneficial if you unmute yourself.
There we go. Let's start again. Hello, everyone. This is me. I've only been doing this nearly 2 years and I still didn't take myself off a mute. Never mind. Carl, come in here. How you doing?
Howdy. How about that, Cowboys?
Don't let your son grow up to be a cowboy, Carl. That's all I can say. Yeah, really looking forward to today's show. Let's bring on the man of the moment, our special guest, Joe. There you go. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is that you're listening. So great to be on with all of you. I'm really excited about this today, and it's a great weekend of football. So thanks for having me on. Much appreciated.
No, definitely. And I've got one little sneaky surprise for you, Joe. One of your ex-coaches heard that you were coming on the show.
Coach, there he is.
There he is.
Coach Bull, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Joe V. I'm telling you, how are you?
I have been following you, man. It has been so exciting. Oh my God, it's so great to see you. You look fantastic. Oh my God.
I was gonna say the same thing. You look like that 18-year-old kid we recruited.
Hey, can I tell while Coach Brian Bolt's on, can I tell you a funny 18-year-old Joe Valerio, Coach Ryan Bolt story? This set my career in motion. And if you think I'm kidding, I am not, Coach Bolt. This was my shining moment. So I was a freshman in college, okay? And we played our own freshman season at the University of Pennsylvania, and we had our own separate coaching staff and everything. And at the end of our 6-game season, some players got to go up and scrap with the varsity guys, okay? So, like, that was like a big thing. If you got selected to go up there as a freshman and practice with the varsity, and I'm telling you, you got beat around. Like, these guys just – because you were on the scout team, right? So Coach Bull, here's Coach Ryan Bolt, Coach Zubrow, Coach Maloney, all of my coaching heroes here, and I get up there, okay, and the scrappy South Philadelphia kid that I am, I get into a fist fight with our captain Mike Lista, and Coach Bull, right? So Mike Lista, he pushed me after the play, and I said, well, I'm not having any of that. I don't care if I'm a freshman or you're the captain of the varsity or not. So we got after it. Now, when you go after the varsity captain as a lowly freshman, the other varsity guys are going to say something about it. So I'm telling you, it was like 100 guys on one. And I got my shirt torn off. I got my helmet ripped off, and they said, go ahead, Valerio, get out. Like, so they sent me back to this walk of shame that I had to do across the bridge of the Schuylkill River to our lowly locker room. Coach Reinbold, the only coach, he chases me down over the bridge, and I swear I thought he was going to try to throw my 240-pound – I only weighed about 240 pounds at the time. I thought he was going to try to throw my 240-pound body over the bridge into the Schuylkill River because I got into a fight with the captain of the varsity. Coach Reinbold grabs me. He says, Valerio, I am going to like you, kid. Now go get a shower, and we're going to see you tomorrow. I was like, yeah, it was my Coach, it was my shining moment. I tell that story all the time about what that meant to me. You chased me down over the bridge to tell me that you respected me for standing up for myself, even though I was a freshman. And I will never forget it. So I'm so glad I got to share that story today with you, with our friends here on Chant NFL.
Hey man, I cannot believe it has been 30 years since I've seen you. That is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's so great to see you, buddy. Congratulations on the new role too.
I appreciate it. Hey, I'm just because I gotta get out of here. But I gotta know as an Italian offensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs, who has, by the way, caught a touchdown from Joe Montana. How did you feel about Allegretti's celebration after he scored last week?
Well, the first things coaches always tell you, act like you've been there before. But, when you're a lineman, you've never been there before. So I was so happy. Like my heart filled up. I was just like, it was unbelievable. He looked so happy and so excited. He's going to treasure that moment for the rest of his life. And I was really happy for the, good paisan from the Chiefs wearing the same number too. Like that was great. That was a crazy thing. We are, it just, it filled my heart. I jumped out of my seat. I think I was celebrating right with him. Now I don't jump as high as I used to, or jump as high as Nick did after he scored. But it was absolutely fun to see, Coach. Thanks for bringing that up. It was good stuff.
Hey man, I got to run. I love you. Take care of yourself.
Love you, Coach.
Leave your contact information so I can catch up with you, Joel. All right.
We'll do, Coach. Take care, buddy. Have a great weekend. All right. See you, buddy.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping on,
guys,
Jeff. I know that was a nice surprise, and it was great to have you on, Jeff. Take care. See you later.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Coach.
See ya.
Thank you for letting me indulge you with that story. I apologize. Because I had to get that. I had to get that story out there about Coach Bull because he was inspirational to me. Sorry I've taken over Railroad in the beginning of the show there, but
honestly, that's fine. I mean, I didn't want to tell you he was coming on because obviously as soon as he saw that you were coming on, he reached out and said, "I used to coach that kid," and I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll send you the link out." Just because I can see who's in the background, and I don't know if guests can see who's in there.
Yeah,
so
exactly,
I said, if you can still make it, I'll send you the link. I know you've only literally got 2 minutes, but I'm sure Joe would love to speak to you. And yeah, it was great. It was really good to hear that story, and I think as well that sort of sums up. I mean, we don't know Jeff personally, but obviously he's big in the NFL over here in the UK, and he's quite a star, and he's very, he's got so much time for the fans, and we appreciate his time whenever he's come on here. So yeah, it was great to hear that story. So thank you for sharing that. Now,
my pleasure.
As I said before we came on the air, I feel a bit unclean because I've got so many Chiefs people that want to speak to you. I don't think it's ever been this way. It's normally all 49ers fans. So without further ado, let's bring on some Chiefs fans. I know they're going to want to talk to you, and we'll get into your playing career, etc. Let's see if Brad, are you hearing? Can you hear? Can you speak?
I can hear you all perfectly now. I had a bit of an issue before. But yeah, I can hear you all now. Can you hear me all right?
We got you, Brad.
Got you. I didn't know if it was us or if it was you. So
no, it was
at least we got
me.
that sorted. Brad, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm very excited this weekend, clearly, with everything that's going on with the divisional round and everything. And yeah, very chilled and very relaxed as well, which is a bit of a surprise for me.
You're lucky. You want to be inside my head and my feelings, especially after last Saturday. It's you go again with the football, and it's winning you through, and it was difficult for us last week. It wasn't so difficult for you guys, but I think everyone was kind of predicting it was going to be. I wouldn't say no game's easy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but it was a dragon slaying though. Like that's the exciting thing about it. Like you've got to be. I grew up in Philadelphia, and as much as I love the Chiefs, I do love my Eagles, and I was super happy to see that team go down in flames, especially the way they did at the end. So I think it was a dragon slaying. I think the 49ers are hot right now, so I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to win, but then I'm a homer, so we'll see what happens. Now let's bring in. He's a regular on our show, and I don't know why we keep having him back. He's, as usual, he's got off of the McDonald's drive-through. He's still got his uniform on. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing good, gentlemen. How are you all doing today?
All good, thanks.
Yeah, I'm as usual. I'm out in the frozen tundra, aka my garage, practicing for what it's like in Green Bay tonight because it is very cold out here. But no, I'm good. Looking forward to talking some football. Got one more person to bring on. It's my man Paul. I couldn't have everyone Chiefs and a neutral, so I had to drag 149ers fan along. Paul, how are you?
All right, buddy. Looking forward to the games. I'm looking forward to all the games this weekend. I'm interested to see how everyone else's feelings are ahead of playoff football.
That would be funny. Oh, you say football has?
Yeah, definitely. As I was saying, I don't know if I can go through what I went through last week tomorrow morning at 1:15. I don't think I could. I'm old. I don't want to have heart palpitations. It was terrible. Wasn't good. It wasn't good. But yeah, no, another round to go. Let's see what happens. So, Joe, tell me about. Now we've had Jesse Sapolo on, 4-time Super Bowl champion.
One of my definitely one of my idols. Guy that I loved watching play. So fantastic player, great guy, even better person.
And and he shared many a Joe Montana story for us. So I'm gonna go straight for the jugular. Share with us your favorite Joe Montana story.
No, I mean that's coming from two guys that have had Joe Montana's hands up their butts. So come on, that's there's a lot. We have a good connection there. I know it's a family show, but talking about the football sense, right?
Brothers for life, I guess you could say.
Exactly. So no, but Jesse, Jesse, great center, really inspirational guy, but playing with Joe Montana, and oh my goodness, when he showed up. When we saw on the television screen that the deal was gonna get done, I was actually in the weight room in Kansas City in the off season getting a workout in. I lived in Kansas City all year. My wife was a school teacher there, so we never really went home back to the Philadelphia area where we grew up. We stayed in Kansas City, so I was there at the epicenter of it when the message came out, and it was like you get heart palpitations, right? Please, no offense against Steve DeBerg and Dave Craig and Steve Pallor and some of the great quarterbacks I had a chance to play with early in my career, but when we knew that Joe Montana was coming, we knew that it was going to be the final piece in the puzzle that was going to elevate the Chiefs organization to the next level. I mean, Marty Schottenheimer had come to Kansas City, taken the team to the playoffs for his first 2 seasons. Carl Peterson, our general manager and president, brought a staff with him that was second to none, and we knew the organization was on the rise. But when Joe Montana got there, it just elevated everything. I'll tell you a funny story about that. This will tell you the scale and the scope of a Joe Montana. For the first 2 seasons I was in Kansas City, my rookie year, my second year, we went to River Falls, Wisconsin for training camp. It was they called it the Cheese League because there was a ton of teams that used to go up to Wisconsin and the surrounding area to have training camp because the weather was cool. Kansas City summers are hot. So we go up there and, we were really far away from home, and we would get some fans. Most fans there, to be honest, were Packers and Vikings fans and Bears fans, but we would get some diehard Kansas City fans that would make that 7, 8, 9 hour drive, however long it was, up to our camp. But, there'd be like 400 or 500 people in the stands for a scrimmage, and it was nice. It was a good crowd, but let me tell you, it wasn't Arrowhead Stadium. In 1993, we come out for our first day at training camp, and we have our meetings in the ice hockey rink area where they set up for us as our kind of our base camp for meetings. And you couldn't see it was a Division III football stadium there. So it was a small college football stadium, and it maybe sat 5,000 to 6,000 people fully at capacity. And Alex Gibbs, who was our offensive line coach, was like probably known as one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL ever, not just even like in the last 20 years. So he was actually played defensive back in college, and he was relatively short compared to all of us. Alex was all of 5'6", and we're all 6'5", 6'7" guys, right? And he's leading us out to our first practice of the training camp in 1993 when Joe Montana and Marcus Allen were now on the team. And we couldn't see the stadium on the path that we were walking to. And all of a sudden you heard this like din of a crowd. And we're like, what the heck is going on? So we turn the corner and there's 7,500 people, standing room only, packed into this stadium, wall to wall people, okay, in River Falls, Wisconsin, a town I think of about 5,000, okay. And Alex Gibbs, and he had a wonderful North Carolina accent, and I'll try to emulate my Italian accent. He's like, boys. He goes, hold on here. He goes, I want you to take a look at all those people up there in the stands. Now, we were only in helmets and shorts. We weren't even wearing pads. Like, this wasn't even a contact practice. Okay. This was a stretching practice. And he says, look at all those fans. He goes, I want to tell you guys something real important. They ain't here to see you. We were like, oh, coach. and he says, and by the way, the people that they are here to see, your job just got a whole lot more important this year. So, all right, let's go have a good practice and a good season. We were like, oh, and I'm like biting my nails, like, oh my God, don't be the guy, don't be the guy that gets Joe Montana hurt. And so, I know that was a long story to a short question, but it set the tone right away that we were going from I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but we were going from a B+ organization, Christian Okoye, and we had some people roll it. Derek Thomas, his career was starting to blossom. We had really solid defensive backs, but man, we went to A+ like in a day. And it was really, I think, the foundation of what you see the Chiefs today was built from that coaching staff, that administration, and I've got to pinpoint it, give the big credit to Joe Montana making the leap of faith and coming to Kansas City and getting that done for us. And I think he really was the foundation that this team was built on, and why they've had so much success over the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah, I'm guessing, obviously, at the time, Brad, I'll ask you, looking back, they were kind of there or thereabouts, Kansas City, and then Marcus Allen and Joe Montana ride into town. And I'm guessing jersey sales went through the roof. Season ticket sales rocketed. It must have been an exciting time for Kansas, for the area, for the team. A real shot in the arm for that team that, as you say, had come into the big leagues by signing players like that, and quite a coup, really, at that time.
It seems to be that, doesn't it? Because Chiefs fans are obviously living in a golden era now, but that was definitely considered to be a golden era of the amount of stars that the Chiefs had got back then. Was it did feel like the Chiefs were being put on the map, and when you had somebody like Joe Montana, he was. I still say he's the GOAT. He can, I'm a bit of a Tom Brady hater anyway, but Joe Montana for me is definitely the guy that everybody really kind of he is emulated, isn't he? He's praised so much, and to have him come to a flyover state team, Joe's right. Joe's gone from like a B+ team, literally through the stratosphere. It feels like almost like the Harlem Globetrotters have turned up on the doorstep of Kansas City, doesn't it? And to be honest, I wasn't a fan at the time. It was well before my time that all this was happening. But I've spoke to a lot of Chiefs fans over the years who have all said the same thing, that it was a euphoria. It was, especially how Joe described there. It was such an amazing feeling that all eyes are on the Chiefs now, and it's time to go on and do something with that team. And it's such a shame that team just fell a little bit short. But we look back fondly on the players, as Joe said. Okoye, Marcus Allen's the guy that got me into watching the Chiefs. Such a star-studded roster that you couldn't help get carried away with that.
And Brad, they were stars, but let me tell you about those two guys. And I want to really tell you about Joe Montana, because I know he's the center of what we're talking about right now. When Joe got there, the thing that made him who he was not the fact that he walked into town with 4 Super Bowl rings. It was the way that he did it. And I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm sure Jesse probably shared some of this humility and work lunch pail mentality that guy had for somebody who ultimately really could have just checked it in. Okay. So, my first interaction with Joe Montana was a fun one. And I've got a couple of really fun Joe Montana stories about the kind of person that he is. First thing, I said to Joe, because, I have a good sense of humor and I love to build rapport with people. And I could sense right away that he was somebody that was going to be that player, even though this was a guy who had literally done it all up to that point. Right, he could have retired on a wave and ridden off into the sunset, and as Brad had mentioned, still be considered the GOAT. So I walk into the locker room to see Joe first time, and everybody's getting to know each other, and we're all making introductions and everything. And it was, it wasn't like everybody just said, "Hey, everybody, here's Joe." It was like, "Hey, he's just another teammate walking in the room," and that's the way he wanted it. And so we got some alone time there, and and I said, "Hey, Joe, I just need to tell you real quick, we're the original Joe and Jennifer here in Kansas City, okay? My wife's name is Jennifer. And I said, you just need to know that, okay? Because this whole you're Joe and Jennifer thing really might not work. I don't know if this town is big enough for the two of us." And the fun that he had with that, he knew that I wasn't intimidated by him, and that's what he wanted. He did not want to be treated differently. He wanted to be one of the guys. He wanted to be the guy that could joke around. He's the reason why I ended up scoring 4 touchdowns, not just because he was the quarterback that threw to me in the games. There's a story behind why he's the reason why I ended up becoming an eligible receiver. And he just wanted to be one of the guys. So, our first team meeting, okay, at minicamp, okay, Joe's in there, and all eyes are on Joe Montana, right? Here's a guy, 4 Super Bowl rings, okay? Not that he wore them around or anything, but if he did, it'd have been hard for him to raise his hand to ask a question of Paul Hackett, right, our offense coordinator. So we're in the meeting room, and we're, all eyes are on this guy, right? What's this going to be? So our playbook went from something that was about, the size of a notepad, okay, it was War and Peace. Okay, because the West Coast offense was it right at the time, and so we're going to simplify the playbook, and we're going to put in a couple of plays a day at minicamp, and then the next minicamp will do the same. And by the time we get to training camp, we'll have the foundation of the playbook in. So we put in 1 pass play and 1 running play on the first day of minicamp, and the play was called 38-39 whack. Okay, and I'm going to tell you, it was the simplest play. I mean, a Pop Warner football team of 8-year-olds could run this play and run it effectively. Okay, it's a receive the ball by the quarterback under center, reverse pivot to the tailback on a sweep with 1 guard pulling, and everybody else is man blocking. It's the simplest of offensive sweep plays. Joe Montana took 3 pages of notes and asked 9 questions of Paul Hackett, our new offensive coordinator. Joe Montana had run that play probably 5,000 times in the playoffs, not just in his life, but in the playoffs. And I'm going, that's a leader. That's somebody who he's got both of his feet on the ground. His pencil is in his ear. His hat's on straight. He's got the same uniform on that we all wore in the locker room. And it was I just right away, and I know that's a small little thing, but to me that was the leadership by example, and that's why taking nothing against from Tom Brady, and look, I know there are people out there is he's very polarizing, right? Yeah. Joe Montana. This is why I agree with you, Brad. Why I think Joe is the GOAT. He was never polarizing ever. Tom Brady was a perfect example, right? Well, first of all, you have some of the things that happened with the deflate gate and the videoing and all that stuff, and let's just put that in the past. But even something as simple as him throwing that Microsoft Surface pad the other day in a game. Joe Montana never berated a player on the field, never gave a player a look, never pointed his finger at somebody. It was always internal with him. And granted, whether he has 4 Super Bowl rings and Tom has 7, or Tom goes on to win 10 more, it's the way he approached the game that really made me really appreciate him. So,
yeah, I mean,
sorry, I was going to say, I suppose that brought like a lot of more of a relaxed attitude to that, especially to that O-line as well. If you've got a guy that you want to keep upright, you're going to have that relaxed atmosphere, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's what he did. I mean, Joe was the ultimate jokester. I mean, he's like I said, he's the reason why I ended up scoring. I was always the big tight end that would come in. I wasn't an everyday starter in my career, and so they would find spots for me. And most of my career, I was that second or third tight end that would come in and do the tank formation or heavy formation on the goal line or short yardage. And my first 2 years, I did it pretty much most of my first 2 years, and nobody ever even thought of sending me out on a pass route. So we get to 1993, and we're at training camp, and it's a heavy atmosphere. You need some light moments. Joe would come out. He would take the stretching rubber bands that we would use, the trainers, and he would shoot water balloons at us as we were walking out of training camp, like out of the locker room. Like he just wanted to have fun. He was a kid, in a man's body. And so we're out there one day, and Paul Hackett, we put in this one play where I would act as a screen, where in goal line, I would go 5 yards into the end zone, and I would hold my hands up, obligatorily, like, okay. And then I would like maybe shoot an elbow or like a shoulder, like to screen, the receivers that were going behind me, try to catch a linebacker off guard. And nobody ever thought, of throwing the ball to me ever. Right. And I could barely get my hands up over my head. And so Joe Montana at practice, he's looking at me, and he's pumping the ball, and he's staring straight at me, and he's only about 8 or 9 yards away. And I'm like, oh God, no. And so like Keith Cash is wide open in the corner of the end zone. Kimball Anders is wide open. Willie Davis that did his little out route fade pattern. I'm like, whoa, Joe, no, And he got this smile on his face, and he's pumping the ball. And now Joe was, I know towards the end of his career, his arm wasn't as strong as, somebody you'd see today, but it was still pretty good arm, regardless of his age. He had a good arm. And especially when you're only 10 yards away from somebody. He fired that thing at me with the intent of knocking me over like a bowling pin, right? This big, chubby, fat, 305-pound guy with, can't get his hands above his head. And he fires it, and like everybody's like, oh, they all like exhale. And I snagged the ball out of the air. And he, like Joe had this like surprised look on his face, and Paul Hackett throws his clipboard up in the air, and he comes running over. He goes, "You can catch?" And I had played baseball catcher my whole life, and I played basketball in high school, so I could receive a ball. I was never going to be I was a wide receiver, but I was never going to be a wide receiver. And he says, "You're going to catch a touchdown pass this year." And I was like, Coach, this West Coast offense thing, wow, this really opens up when guys like me are scoring. He said, no, if you continue to show that you can catch like that, you're going to catch a ball this season. And Joe was like, yeah, let's make it happen. And it all came out of Joe Montana being the ultimate prankster and wanting to lighten the moment. And, that's just the kind of guy he was. He really made you feel at ease. And the way he made you feel at ease is when he called my number. When he called my number during those touchdown plays, he never looked at me like I was the fat 300-pound offensive lineman who couldn't get his hands over his head. He called the play like I was Jerry Rice. Now, I was only 193 touchdowns behind Jerry Rice, but he called my number like I was Jerry Rice. Confidence in your teammates, love of your teammates. That's what he exemplified and he exuded, and why he's the GOAT. Sorry, Brad, I'm going to agree with you 1,000%. That's why I think he's the GOAT, because of all of those little things.
Agreed.
I think he's the GOAT anyway, and I'll give you my reasons very, very quickly.
Let's hear it.
4 Super Bowls, 4 MVPs, no headsets to speak of. all done by going to the side, players sending in the plays, no protection from referees whatsoever. And I know it's a different game and you can't compare and this, that, and the other. But as you said, Joe wouldn't have thrown that surface thing. He wouldn't have deflated balls. And by the way, Joe, Carl, our friend here, is a New England Patriots fan who lived through the TV12 era, and we're always on at him.
Even in an inflated universe, we would have still kicked the Colts' ass. I'll just leave it there.
But yeah, I mean, what were when like you just telling us about him throwing that pass in practice? What's going through your head when he's pumping it and looking at you? Are you thinking, please don't mess this up? Please don't mess. Was there more pressure on that, or when you actually caught your first live touchdown in a game?
That's a great question. I'd have to say it was probably that first moment, because that was the genesis of it all. You know, that was the opportunity to say, hey, I can do something a little different here. That ball was hurling, you know, towards me, and but that's what Joe did. He made you feel confident, and that's why I never really had, you know, the fear during, you know, the first one that I scored against the Oakland Raiders was on 4th and 1. You know, and you're playing the Raiders, and you know that's a pressure-filled situation, especially when you're the only receiver. Like, it wasn't like I was an outlet. You know, when I caught that first one, it was 4th and 1. We're playing the Raiders at home. You know, that was the game for us, right? I mean, that was always it was Raider week. We talked about that all the time. And yeah, like, but Joe never made you feel like you couldn't do something, because what I used to see him do, and I've taken his leadership skills into my life. I've been in the insurance industry. I work for a UK-based company, Willis Towers Watson, and you know, I'm sure those of you in the UK might be familiar with the Willis Tower in London. But you know, I've taken all those lessons to me in everything I do. My family, community, like his work ethic, his ability to be as cool as the other side of the pillow under pressure, right? That's what I always used to say about Joe. He was as cool as the other side of the pillow. And that confidence he had in his teammates, and the things I used to see him do when there was a struggle between, whether it was a center snap count, you know, a center snap issue, right? If we were having trouble with our center exchange, if, you know, because I never wanted to be the guy, because I was the backup center, so I'd have to get reps with Joe a lot, you know, just in case our starting center Tim Grunhard got hurt, and it did happen in games where I had to go in and play as Joe's center. And, you know, you didn't want to be the guy to like break his finger, right? That's the last thing I would have needed, right? That would have been the headline of a newspaper. But like, when there was issues with the exchange, or there was issues with a receiving route that wasn't timed right, or a handoff, a mesh between a running back and Joe, it was never about them. It was always about him. It was about, what can I do better to correct this situation? I'm going to look at myself first, okay? And then I'm going to take the extra time to make it right. And to me, that was the kind of leadership that I've tried to emulate in my, you know, business career, my life, as far as being a leader by example, and always looking internally first at what you can do to improve the situation before you point the finger at somebody else. And I think that's the kind of leadership that really put him into that stratosphere of quarterbacks and people, and he was able to get to the top of his profession in that way. And that's what I think lessons I've tried to take with me my whole life, that I've gotten from that guy, and watching him, the way he approached life and football.
I definitely think, before I bring Scott in, again, being biased, I think Joe Montana had one of the best spiral throws I think you'll ever likely to see. I mean, that you watch some of these old NFL films, and that spiral on some of those deep balls to John Taylor, Jerry Rice, Roger Craig out the backfield. I mean, it's a thing of beauty when you see those laces spin.
Yeah,
it's just,
you could read the Wilson as it was coming on the football.
As it was coming. No, exactly.
I think
Scott,
him and Warren Moon would be
quiet. I wondered if you'd muted yourself or you'd frozen. I've never seen you so quiet. So come on, Scott.
No, I'm good. I'm just sitting here and enjoying the stories, man. You know, it's funny. Joe was talking about when the announcement was made that Joe Montana was coming to the Chiefs. He can remember where he was. I was 11 years old in 1993, and I remember I was laying in bed, and I heard my mom in the living room start screaming. I'm in my bedroom. She's going, yes. And I was like, what the hell? So I run out in the living room, and she's watching ESPN, and it's on the screen, Joe Montana, and it's got the arrowhead next to his name. It's like signing a deal, going to Kansas City. And like my brother had heard it, and he jumped out of, he had run out of his bedroom, and we're like going crazy running around the house. And I went and I put my Chiefs jersey or my t-shirt on, and I think me and my brother probably got the football and went out and started chucking it around out in the yard. And yeah, no, just really exciting times. And those teams in the early 90s are where, I just solidified my love. My family's from Kansas City, but I didn't grow up here in the Kansas City area. I moved back here later in life as an adult. So just hearing the stories about what it was like to play with Joe, and just, kind of reminiscing as he's telling me stories about what it was like being a young kid and learning football. And one of my earliest memories is I remember we were replacing a window in our house with me and my brother and my dad. And I want to say that would have been 91 or 92. The Chiefs beat the Steelers in the playoffs. And my dad hated the Steelers. And I just remember how excited he was. I remember watching that game. That kind of was getting me into football. And I'd watched games with him before. And then we get Joe Montana. And it was just like this snowball of fandom going down the hill to get bigger and bigger. And then the Chiefs make the AFC Championship. And, one of the cool things about Joe's touchdowns is they're like in iconic games, like the game against the 49ers, Steve Young versus Joe Montana, the Monday night shootout, Monday Night Football at Mile High with Joe Montana and John Elway. Just remembering those games, as being a young fan, wearing my Apex and my starter jackets to school. Growing up, I grew up in New Mexico, so I was around a lot of Broncos and a lot of Cowboys fans. I always say there's three fans of people in where I grew up, and it was Broncos, Cowboys, and whoever won the Super Bowl the year before, because you get all the bandwagon fans out there as well. So yeah, just really cool. Glad we could get Joe on here, and just enjoying hearing the stories, man. He's a great storyteller, and he's definitely got some good ones to share for sure.
Can I just dovetail on what Scott was saying about it? And Scott, I would be remiss if I did not talk about the way that Chiefs Kingdom makes it work and makes it happen. Because yes, you can be an NFL team in a city, and you can live there, and you can play there, and you can exist there. But the embrace that you get, not just, of course, the physical geography of living in Kansas City, right, as a player, there's that part, because they are a passionate, diehard group of fans. But first and foremost, it's a community of fans, and it's a community of people. And then you extend it out to, like, I live in Philadelphia now, and I've always lived in Philadelphia. That's where my family is from. And I'm going to tell you this: I would have 1,000% settled in Kansas City had my wife and I not grown up together. My wife and I went to high school together, and then my wife was pregnant with triplets when I was let go by Kansas City. And so we went back to Philadelphia because, you can't, there's no man to man when you have triplets. Okay. So like we had to go back to where our family was. So, I was basically, because I'd hurt my back. I was in and out of, kind of rehabilitation situations, trying to get back into the league. And so we moved back to Philadelphia. But long story long, I would have absolutely settled there had my wife and I not been from the same hometown, and we had these extenuating circumstances because of the community of people there and the embrace that they put around the players. But it's an embrace that lets you be who you are. One of the things that Joe Montana was really excited about, he used to tell us this story about, he was living in a neighborhood. He actually lived in the neighborhood. My wife was an elementary school teacher, and he lived in the neighborhood where my wife taught school, right, only a few streets away from her elementary school. And he'll never forget, one day, like 5 or 6 kids had shown up with tossing a football up in the air. And, here he is. Okay, they knock at the door, right? Joe doesn't have any security. Joe drove himself to work in a Buick Riata every day, okay? And so he's, these kids are throwing the football up. They knock the door. Of course, Joe comes over to the door. He's got the Sharpie marker in his hand, thinking these kids are going, oh, God, more kids want an autograph, blah, blah. And they're like, "Hey, Mr. Montana, can Nick come out and play?" And he's like, what, you don't want the autograph? Like, you don't want my jersey? You don't want my helmet? You don't want my sweatbands? Like, what? No, like, wow, we want to play with Nick. I heard Nick's our aide, and come on, he can come out and play some football with us. And like, Joe's like, wow, like this is a community that respects what we all did as players, and they were fans, and that was awesome. But they gave you your space. Joe Montana never had to close a movie theater down so he could go watch a movie with his family. He went to the movies and he walked in, and people, of course, of course they're going to gawk, right? That's Joe Montana. Like, he's going to go to a restaurant, people are going to put their fork down and go, hey, that's Joe Montana. But they gave everybody their space. And there's Patrick Mahomes has a story about that, where he and his fiancee Brittany were at a restaurant, and literally not one person came up to him while they were having dinner as a family. Not one person came up to him to bother him, ask him a question, ask for an autograph. So what did he do when he left? He said, hey, everybody, I really want to thank you for allowing me and Brittany to have a really nice dinner. Bill's on me. I'll take care of all your dinner. And like, that's the kind of, I know those are little small stories, but that's why Kansas City is the place that it is. And that's why the fandom is what it is. And I live in Philadelphia now. There's a group called Big Charlie's Saloon here in Philadelphia. You want to talk about diehard Chiefs fans. And that's where my dad used to go and watch the games. And they of course they'd have the meatballs and the Sunday gravy and everything for him and all my family that would go there to watch the games. And there's just Chiefs fans everywhere. And it's a great community, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, Big Charlie's is definitely on the destination hotspot to go check out. I've got it on the list of places to go see. So definitely.
I've got to ask.
What's that?
Sorry, I've got to ask, Joe, for myself, Carl, and Paul. What is Sunday gravy?
Sunday gravy is the sauce, as some people would call it, because it's not like brown gravy you would put on turkey or chicken or something like that. It's a Sunday gravy is the gravy that just an Italian grandmom or mom or dad would just be making all day, and they would let it'd be a big pot of Italian pasta sauce, and it would have if some people like it with pork bones, some people like it with meatballs, and it just simmers all day long, and then you have a nice big Sunday Italian flavored dinner, and that's how I grew up. I grew up when my family moved out of South Philadelphia, we moved 10 families all at one time, moved out into the suburbs of Philadelphia right before I went to first grade. And so that's how I grew up. And so that's what Sunday gravy is. It's the gravy pasta sauce that you make all day long, and that you get your hand slapped if you touch it and dip your finger in or get a spoonful.
Because normally when we have guests on from across the pond, and obviously us being British, English, whatever you want to call it, normally we have to explain a certain saying or something to our American friends. And that's the first time I think we've ever had to ask, isn't it, Carl? I think that's the first time we've ever had to ask for a translation on something.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, but it's it just and speaking of Italians, Joe had that connection. We had that connection of being Italian. My dad was a professional boxer, and he had 30 plus fights. He trained one of his sparring partners, and one of his better friends was a guy named Joe Giardello, who in the 40s and 50s, had attained he was the middleweight champion of the world. And he was in my dad's gym, and my dad, so when I introduced my dad to Joe Montana in 1993 at a game, my dad really wanted to meet him, because, there's one a lot of football players, let alone, famous quarterbacks like that, Dan Marino with a vowel at the end of their name. Right. So he wants to meet Joe Montana, and, especially since he grew up in Pennsylvania. My dad was a huge Joe Montana fan. So I said, hey, yeah, Pop, we'll meet Joe Montana. So I waved Joe down in the locker and said, hey, Joe, would you mind? I want to introduce you to my pops. He goes, oh my God, yeah. So first thing, tells you about Joe Montana. What's he call my dad? Mr. Valerio, right? It's just like that's who he was. Another little small example of why I absolutely love the guy. So he says to my dad, he says, "Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Valerio." And my dad is really funny guy, and he looked a lot like Robert De Niro. And he says to Joe, he says, "Joe, I got to tell you something." He goes, "Meeting you is not my actual biggest sports exciting thing that happened in my life." And of course, now he's reeling Joe in, right? The same way I reeled in Joe with the whole Joe and Jennifer thing. And he's like, "Oh, Mr. Valerio, you got to tell me then why not meeting me isn't your most exciting sports moment." He's like, "Come on." He's like, "I'm Joe Montana," right? So he's having like fun with my dad, and they're just building this rapport. So my dad says, "Well, no," he goes, "Let me tell you about it." He goes, "Back when I was boxing," he goes, "Jersey Joe Walcott and Rocky Marciano decide they're going to fight in Philadelphia." And he says, "And guess where Rocky Marciano comes to train? My gym, Olympia Gym, right?" And he goes, "Guess who they want to be a sparring partner with Rocky Marciano? This old guy." And Joe Montana's like, he's like, "You got to spar with Rocky Marciano?" And my dad's like, "Yeah, he was okay." And like they're laughing about it, right? And so Joe Montana says to my dad, he goes, "You know what, Mr. Valerio?" He goes, "Meeting a schlub like me isn't anything close to having the opportunity to spar with the greatest heavyweight of all time, Rocky Marciano." He goes, "That's awesome, Mr. Valerio. That's great." He goes, that's really cool." He goes, "I love, yeah." But like, that's like the rapport that he would build with people instantly, and the humility that he went through life with. And that was, was one of my favorite memories. And my dad got to experience that. Of course, meeting Joe was probably my dad's favorite thing he ever did in sports, but just to have that story and that bond. And every time Joe Montana would see my dad in the locker room, because my dad would come to all kinds of games. Every time Joe Montana would see my dad, he'd go, "Keep the left up, Mr. V. Keep the left up." Like, he didn't have to do that. He could have gotten his car, gone home, and it's just fun little things to, that what goes on when you're a fan like me. I was a fan of Joe Montana. It was intimidating to be around a guy like that, even somebody who, I had already been in the league for several years. So, fun stuff with Joe.
Definitely. I mean, he does come across as what you would call, I guess, a blue collar guy. Certainly, sort of airs and graces about him. Not like a lot of the QBs, I would say, of today. But again, it's a different era and stuff like that. I'm just looking at your career stats, Joe, and it's quite interesting. You played in 62 games, and this is Wikipedia, so it's probably wrong, but who knows? Let's try.
It's all good, directionally correct.
Started 4 games. You had 4 receptions for 7 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, that's quite a good treble 4 going right on. You got a nice trifecta there.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things that I'm like actually really proud of, the touchdowns are great, and those 4 starts that I did have, I actually started at every position. I started a game at center, I started a game at guard, I started a game at tackle, and I started a game at tight end against the Chargers. And I just felt like I did whatever I could to get out on the field. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. It's in the Ivy League. I always joke I was blocking Biff McNutty from Harvard, and then I was going against Howie Long and Reggie White. Like, what just happened? Like, how did that happen? Like, how did I go from the Ivy League to the NFL? And it was very, very interesting story. And that my dad, I got an internship when I was in college right before my senior year, and I was probably only slated to be a late, going into my senior year, probably a late draft pick or maybe a free agent signing, coming out of college. And my dad, my wife actually talked me into getting an internship at a financial services firm. So, I got the job, and I was, my dad, we only had one car growing up. So and I only had like one dress shirt. It was short sleeved. I had a tie that was way too short, a couple pairs of slacks and some old dress shoes. And I didn't even own a sport coat at that point. And my dad drove me to the train to go into the city to start my internship. And the first thing he said to me, he said, "Son, you're going to go to that job and you're going to do the work and you're going to do it humbly. Okay. You hear me?" Now, my dad, as big as I was at that time, I was probably 6'5", 315 pounds, benching whatever. And my dad could have kicked my butt. He was 165 pounds. And he said, do you hear me? And I said, Dad, I got it, Pop. Because if there was ever a time in my life I could have been a total jerk, it was that time in my life, right? Like I had, I always joke with people, I way out kicked my coverage in the girlfriend department. I don't know what she was doing with me. I was an all Ivy League. I was an All-American. I was the captain of an Ivy League football team. And I'm not saying that stuff braggingly. I'm saying that was the reality that I was living in at that time. And if there was a time in my life I could have been just like Joe Montana, right? Just checking things in, collect my $8 an hour, my internship, and, just kind of like, leave when I wanted to leave and do what I wanted to do. I got this internship through the football program. My dad just pumped it into my head, like, son, do the work, do it humbly. Whatever they ask you to do, you treat everybody the same, from the person who comes in the evenings to clean the waste baskets to the big mahaf, the big chief of the office. I said, all right, Dad, I got it. I got you, Pop. So I did that. When they asked me to clean the coffee pots, I cleaned the coffee pots. I was a lineman, right? That's what we do. I would carry filing cabinets. I would take the paper clips off of files and save good paper clips. Like, I did whatever they needed me to do. Nothing was too small or too big. So I'll fast forward 6 months later. I'm at the NFL Combine, and I'm meeting with Carl Peterson and Marty Schottenheimer and Howard Mudd, who was the offensive line coach from the Chiefs, in the hotel room in Indianapolis after all the workouts were done. And we go through the typical interviews, and Marty Schottenheimer says, Joe, about that ankle that you sprained in 8th grade, is that healed? I'm like, boy, you guys really do your homework. Holy cow. So he says, Carl says to me, Mr. Peterson says, Joe, I got one final question to ask you. He says, tell me about your internship at Kidder Peabody last summer. And I was like, what do you mean, Mr. Peterson? I said, what does, working at a financial services firm have to do with running into 300-pound guys really fast? Like, there was some part of the equation that wasn't making sense to me. And he says, well, it has everything to do with it. He goes, do you remember a gentleman there by the name of Tim Sennett? And I was like, oh yeah, Mr. Sennett was, as my dad would say, the big mahaf. And he says, yeah, he says, that big mahaf is one of my college roommates, one of my best friends and godparents to one of my kids. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. He said, did you know that? I said, no, I never knew that. He said, well, what Mr. Sennett, as you called him, Joe, told me about you and the way you handled that internship, he said, the reason why we're going to draft you next month in the NFL draft. And he's like, so what's the lesson you learned? I said, well, I guess you never know who's watching, and so, like, he's like, you're absolutely right. That's what the Chiefs organization wants. They want people in the locker room who are going to do the right thing even when no one's watching. And it was a lesson I've taken with me my whole life. And my daughter, who's in med school right now in New York, she has a little board that she keeps up, and it says on there, do the work and do it humbly, pop up. So, like, those kind of lessons that you go through life, and like the Chiefs organization just kept enforcing that kind of mentality for me. And so, getting to play for an organization like that, where those kind of values were appreciated, really, kept me going. And so I love to talk about those touchdowns and playing, but, that's really what I learned. But to answer your question about the touchdowns, yeah, I lived every lineman's dream, right? Come on. I mean, but I did pay for a lot of dinners, and I used to have to take the offensive line out and the quarterbacks every time I score. So it did hit the pocketbook deep. And in one, I have a funny story about Lamar Hunt, our owner. So I had a paycheck once. I got fined so bad, and I had to buy so many tickets when we were playing on the East Coast that, and the fines meaning coming from my teammates and having to, pay for dinners. I got a paycheck once from the Kansas City Chiefs organization for 10 cents. And I kept that check. And I made a color copy of it, and I brought it to Mr. Hunt years later at an alumni event. And I said, hey, Mr. Hunt, I wanted to bring you this check because I'm really sorry that I've been keeping your checkbook out of balance all these years. And he said, hey, he goes, this is the kind of guy he was. He goes, Norma has been on me for so long because she couldn't balance the checkbook because of this 10-cent check. And he laughed, and we had a good laugh about it. And he said, Joe, I got to ask you something. Why did you keep that check? And I said, well, Mr. Peterson, someday when my daughters grew up and they decided that Dad played in the NFL and they all wanted a new car, I'd show them that check and say, well, this is what the Chiefs paid me when I played in the NFL. So we didn't really get paid that well, girls. So you're going to have to buy your own car. So we had a lot of fun about that. But yeah, it was an interesting stat line for sure.
It's funny you say that, and I'm going to ask you one more question before I bring Paul in, because he's been sitting there patiently. I went to Las Vegas and managed to get a cent cash out form, and I've still got that framed. And I always say that was the time I beat Vegas, because that's the only time I think I've ever won out there. You were drafted in the second round, pick 50 overall. Obviously, you said in that last bit that you were saying that you thought you was going to be either undrafted or a late round. What was that like when you did get picked so high in that draft?
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. And looking back on it in retrospect, I was a little shocked. That the Chiefs would take a shot on a kid, from the Ivy League who didn't play against, the guys from Oklahoma and Nebraska and Notre Dame and Penn State and all those big Michigan big time football schools. So it was a real thrill. I mean, I got to be honest, during the draft. Now remember, this is pre-social media, right? 1991. There's no cell phones to speak of, no texting, no ESPN 8, that you could tune into, or the NFL channel. Like, the draft was usually televised the first round, and then basically it went off the air, and everything else after that was either you listened to the radio or, you got updates on your local news channel about what was going on. So I was completely out of the loop because the first round had ended and we were all having a party and we were all at our house just kind of anticipating what was going to happen. And then the phone rang, and I was at my brother's house with all of our family and friends, and Carl Peterson was on the line. My brother answered the phone, and he's like, "Okay, Mr. Peterson, I'll get Joe." So I get on the phone, and it's Carl Peterson, and he says, "Joe, this is Carl Peterson," and he said, "We're about to take you in the NFL draft." And I said to him, "What round is it, Mr. Peterson? The 5th?" And he goes, "Joe," he goes, "have a little more confidence in yourself, buddy." He goes, "It's the second round." He goes, "We're taking you with the number 50 pick. We just picked Chris Zorich just got picked by the Bears." And I was like, I was shocked. I have to say, and not because I didn't have confidence in myself, really. I mean, every athlete has to have confidence in himself to perform at a certain level. But I was honored. It was a privilege to be thought of that way, coming out of a small school, that the Chiefs would do that. And I tried everything I could to live up to that, and to be the player that they wanted to have. And, sometimes injuries and things take their toll on you. And I hurt my back in a preseason game and we were actually playing in Monterrey, Mexico. And I hurt my back, and, I just never really was able to recover from it. And, Mike Bell, who played for the Chiefs a long time, used to say, "Hey, it ends for everybody, just some sooner than others." And you have to come to that reality that's going to end, and how you're going to accept the rest of your life. And, I just wanted to go with all the lessons that I learned and be thankful. One of my biggest thrills, and not just because, I'm talking with all my great friends now here across the pond, but playing in Wembley Stadium was a real thrill. In between my rookie year, and then my second year with the Chiefs, the NFL was still very active with the World League of American Football. And if you remember, there was a team, the London Monarchs, right, that played, and Stan Gelbaugh was the quarterback. He was an NFL holdover that had a really nice career with the London Monarchs. I think one of the Garrett brothers played for them, who, Jason Garrett obviously was the coach of the Cowboys, but I think one of the Garrett brothers played for the London Monarchs. And we got to play in Wembley Stadium when I played for the Birmingham Fire in Birmingham, Alabama. And that was an interesting, when you talk about getting drafted high. And so, the Chiefs were like, "Joe, your rookie year wasn't, you didn't really play a whole lot. So, how about we send you to the World League to get some experience to play against some high caliber players?" So I went down to Birmingham, Alabama, and played for the Birmingham Fire. And I came back in 1992 ready to go. And I started those 3 of those games of the 4 that I started. I did start during the 92 season and had a lot of fun in those games. And so it really prepared me. But again, back to it is, I had, until I was 22 years old, I had never been on an airplane. And so, to get to go to London and Frankfurt, Germany, and play in Europe, like, I had never been outside of about a 200 to 300 mile radius of my home until I went, well, college wasn't really, because we just played on the East Coast and I never flew in an airplane. We just drove buses. And then, so, it was a real thrill. And I'll tell you, it was a memory for me. And we've been back, taking my family to London, several times since, because it's such a great place. And, we love it. And it's so much fun. And we were there during the 2012 Olympics. We came over, we stayed in Earl's Court right near the volleyball venue. And we just love it. And like I said, I work for a UK based company, so I get the opportunity to do that. So the next time I'm over there, I have to look you all up and make sure maybe we could get together. But yeah, a lot of thrills coming out of playing in the NFL, and getting drafted in the second round was, to answer your question, was a real thrill.
Well, it sounds like they should have started you more.
Yeah.
I don't know what the coaching staff was doing there. Hell, they should have started you every week, it seems like. But
yeah, well, it was nice of you to say, Scott.
I know you told that story on our show when we had you on a week or so ago about the internship, and I just love that. That's a great story, not only from someone who's close to their father, like I am, and I know you are with your dad, but just a great lesson. And the whole you never know who's watching. I mean, that really rings true today when you're playing a team like the Patriots, right, Carl? I mean, you never know who's watching, maybe recording your games. So that's
well, if you're playing for the Patriots opponents, you can guarantee it's the Patriots that are filming you from afar up a tree somewhere with a big telephoto lens. But that's another story, Carl. Paul, come in. You've been sitting patiently. Is there anything you want to say to Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Joe, like Scott said, I'm a father of 3 girls. So your story of the check made me laugh, because I'm fairly new to the Shant Club, and my 8-year-old loves YouTube. So she's telling all her school friends that Daddy's on YouTube. And I'm like, there's no money in, there's no money. So listening to you tell that story, Joe, I did want to ask you one question, though. You said you work for a UK-based company, and I just wanted to know, is the NFL something that is talked about in your work life? Because my colleagues think I'm mental for staying up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning watching this game that they do not understand. So I just wanted to ask how you've encountered working in the UK and people hearing you're an NFL player. Does it hold any sway, or is it just like, what on earth's the NFL?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. No, I think they love to talk about it, because they'll try to make the connections between real football, right, soccer, and what I do, and knowing that that there's some not analogies is probably not the right word, but there's some it's a little bit of equal footing, right, to play for a team like in the Premier League or a Champions League. Like there's definitely a like, oh wow, like you do that. Like they definitely make the connection that it's it's kind of the equivalent, is the word I was looking for. It's the equivalent of playing in a league like that. But the thing I love about football, right, I'll use that term, is I love the community of it. I'm a huge soccer fan, and I love that. I think about what it would be like to take the NFL and to smush it into what would be considered the New England area of the United States, right? If you superimposed the UK over a map of the United States, it would be like kind of taking the UK and plopping it over the New England area, right? And taking in some of the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. And to think that you would have 32 teams in that small of an area, and that, like, it's about the neighborhood. Like, of course, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. I'm a huge Premier League fan. And I think about what that would be like to be in a town where your stadium was in your neighborhood. The NFL is a little different, and I think that's what I think that's why it's same but different, in that it's so much more like Kansas City. Soccer is so much more community based, at least from what I know. And from what I've seen of it, and people that I've worked with, like a good friend of mine that I work with at Willis Towers Watson, formerly known as Willis. He's a Tottenham, supporter, and like he would come in. We worked together in New York a lot. We talk about how Tottenham was doing and all this stuff, and he would tell me, and it felt so intimate, which I think is a little different than the way you get the feeling that you get when you play or the fan of an NFL team. It's just a little bit more community, a little bit more intimate, in my opinion.
That's very interesting what you say about. Sorry, Paul. Go ahead. Sorry.
The only reason I asked, and Scott is going to love this, the Chiefs are known as one of the better teams in the NFL over here, and Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey sort of see you with the Kansas logo on. That would hold a lot of sway, because I know a lot of fans who've got into the sport last couple of years. The Chiefs are like one of the teams. And when I said I was coming on here today, one of my friends has only been in the game for about 6 months, and he's a Chiefs fan, which will please Scott. He was like, "You're going to be talking to an ex-Chiefs player." I was like, "Yes, I am."
Hey, we felt the same way when I connected with Joe on Twitter. I was like, I couldn't believe it. He was like, "Yeah, I'll come on your show." I was like, "Dude, there's no way." He just said yes. I told my brother. I called him like right away. I was like, I think I actually got a Chiefs guy that's going to come on the show, man. So.
Oh my God! It's so funny because most players will tell you, I was just a kid playing a game that it was, and not to, belittle what I did, but I just always felt so lucky and blessed to be doing what I was doing. And, I'll never forget going to we'll circle back to Joe Montana. So, we developed this relationship with Joe. And like one of my biggest thrills is that he called me in one of the books that was written about Joe. He said, he called me like one of his better friends. I was like, what? Like, did he just write that in a book? Like he said that? But we were at Joe Montana's retirement party in San Francisco, and I got to meet a lot of his teammates, and people that were he was friends with in San Francisco. We had this great party. His wife hosted for him, and Chris Berman was there. Huey Lewis and the News, for those of you who listen to them as a band at all might know them. Joe is best of friends with Huey Lewis and all those guys. So one of my favorite moments of the night was towards the end of the night when everybody was giving their toast to Joe, and Chris Berman, of course, the boomer, the voice of ESPN, and then Huey Lewis gets up with the news, and he starts singing a song that he wrote for Joe, and it was hysterical because he took the song "You've Got Soul" and they reworded it, and my memory's going, and I wish I could remember all the words, but my favorite line of the song that they wrote for Joe's retirement party was, I'll indulge you and sing a little bit, even though I'm horrible. And my wife, if she hears me singing, she's going to be really mad because I am horrible. So he goes, they're doing the Huey Lewis thing, and Huey Lewis starts, the song, and he goes, "You got slow. Now you gotta go, but it's all right." And the whole place just roared. Like I'm looking, and so like Danny Glover's there, Mario Lopez from Saved by the Bell was there. I was hoping Screech would be there, but he wasn't. If anybody's ever seen that show, and so AC Slater, and I'm looking around. Chris Mullen, an NBA star, and they're all of Joe's friends, and there's Chiefs, there's 49ers. And I looked at my wife and I was like, I don't know why we say pardon my French. The French curse a lot, but anyway, pardon my French. I was like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, what is it? Like, what? Pinch me, wake me up. Like, is this, I'm at Joe Montana's retirement party. Like, what happened in my life that got me here? I'm just a kid from South Philly who my brothers dragged around. We joke all the time, I was raised by wolves, basically. Because I had these 3 older brothers would drag me around, keep you humble. And it's like, I was like, what's happened? Like, and so Scott, I really appreciate you saying that. And I just feel like I was just some guy who happened to, get your lucky break and make it and to hang around with those guys and it never keeping far from it that, there for the grace of God go I, right? Like it could have been born in different circumstances, and I was, because I gotta be honest, guys, I was not I think another thing, Scott, that helped was that I went to a small school, right? Like there was no next level for me, like where somebody said, "Oh, he's the top recruit out of the state of Pennsylvania, and he's going to, Michigan to play football." Like I never expected that. I mean, I gotta be honest, guys, I didn't become a starter in football until I was probably 10th grade. So I was always just, the guy on the team, because here's how big I was when I was 10th grade. So, in 10th grade in the US, you're turning 16 basically, okay, in the 10th grade of your secondary education. And I was 5'10", 175 pounds. Okay, so I want you to picture that, right? I was not, I'm trying to think of some, offensive linemen or, people that, I was no Chris Jones for you Chiefs fans. I was no TJ Watt in 10th grade. And so, but between my 10th grade and 11th grade year, I went from, and I thought baseball was what I was going to do in college. I thought I was going to play baseball in college. And I wrestled, I was a wrestler. And I went from 5'10", 175 pounds to 6'5", 195 pounds in 1 year. Now, the 20 pounds didn't look like a whole lot, because when I turned sideways, all you saw was my Roman nose. So I had by no means built anything around these bones of mine. And, I had to stop wrestling at that point, because there is no weight class to wrestle when you're 6'5" and you only weigh 195 pounds. Somebody would have broken me in half. I had never touched a weight. I had never weightlifted or anything. And so, Scott, I never really thought that was going to be me anyway. Now, did I have dreams of it? Did I dream of myself playing in a professional sport? Yeah, but I always thought it was going to be baseball. And, I boxed for 8 years, but I had to stop doing that because my nose just got way too big. And, my dad was like, "Son, that nose is going to be all over your face. I think you should pretty much hang the gloves up." I was like, "Yeah, Dad, I think you're right. I don't want to have a nose like you." And he, so we tried to find my thing. And then all of a sudden, by the time I got to my senior year in high school, I was 6'5", but I only weighed about 215 pounds. So I wasn't highly recruited. And, a lot of coaches said that I was, I wish Coach Reinbold was still on, because the University of Pennsylvania gave this skinny kid from South Philly a shot, because everybody said I was too slow. They clocked me on a calendar when I ran the 40-yard dash. So there was no future for me in that game, except that Penn saw something in me and said, you can play at this level. And it just kind of built from there. And, that was, but anyway, Scott, I know that I talk a lot, right? Obviously. And I apologize if I'm commanding the mic here. I do apologize. But it's that kind of like, there was no trajectory for me. So when I got to the NFL, every day, my biggest goal was to see my name up on the locker. Like, that was it. Like, if it was there, I could just breathe easy. My name's on the locker. I'll go home tonight. I'll watch my film. I'll have a great practice today. And then I'll come back tomorrow and hope my name is still on the locker. And that for me, I think, was the lineman's mentality. And, I learned that early. My dad, okay, again, I'm sorry to make it about my dad all the time, but when I came home, guys, from Pop Warner football tryouts, okay, and this, I think, Scott, we talked about this story right on the show. My dream was to play like quarterback, right? Like, so when I would watch games or I would go out in the backyard, I would be the quarterback, the wide receiver, the announcer. This is Joe Valerio at Joe Valerio Stadium. And, we have star quarterback Joe Valerio taking the snap from his roommate and best friend, the center, Joe Valerio. Like, I would throw the ball to myself. But so I went to these tryouts as a Pop Warner Little League football player at 7 years old, 6 or 7. And I came home, and they're tackling and we're running and we're throwing and we're catching, and they're timing us in a little 40-yard dash and figuring out what's the best position for us to play. So I end up, coach is like, "Okay, Bobby, get in there at quarterback." I'm like, "Whoa, coach, get in there at running back, Timmy." I'm like, "Whoa, coach, I got the Heisman pose." Like what the heck? So I come home. So the coach says, "All right, Valerio, get in there at right guard." I was like, "Right guard?" I was like, "My dad wears deodorant called right guard. Like, what the hell are you talking about?" So I come home and I'm like, "Dad," I said, my dad's like, "Hey, how was football practice?" Right? My dad, like I said, he was a boxer. He didn't really know much about football. I said, "Dad, I'm playing on the line." He goes, you sound disappointed. I said, yeah, I am. He goes, why are you disappointed? You get to block. And I said, Dad, when am I going to get my name in the paper? When am I going to get my name announced on the loudspeaker? He goes, probably when you get a holding call. I was like, well, that doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah.
And so like
that's not a good
yeah,
place to be. Very quickly, Joe, going back to what you were saying about announcing yourself, I think a lot of children in the UK, I always did, playing soccer, I would always be the star player. Whenever we played soccer on the field with all our friends, I was always wanted to be the star player, and I actually convinced myself, even though I got 2 left feet and I kept tripping over, I was always that star player that would always score that goal that won the FA Cup or the World Cup or something like that. So I can definitely assimilate to what you were saying there. Carl, you've got a question, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, Joe. Let's talk a little bit of your accolades before you went to the NFL. So obviously you went to the University of Pennsylvania. In 1988, you was the only sophomore to letter an offense for a team that went 9-1. You also won the Ivy League championship in that year, and also in 1990 as well. In 2005, you got inducted into the Penn Athletic Hall of Fame. What was your reaction when you got told that you was going to be put into the Hall of Fame?
Oh my gosh, that to me was, I felt like I was just standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, it just there's some history to the University of Pennsylvania, and the history of it from a major college perspective probably stops around 1959. When the Ivy League was actually formed and became official. Like it was always called, the Ivy League, but it really, like in 1959, they formalized everything. And that's when the league decided to go away from giving scholarships, athletic scholarships. So any student that goes to Penn to play a sport is either there on financial need or, whatever can come up with the money to pay to go there. So when I think about the players that played there that my dad knew, growing up in the Philadelphia area, because Penn it's in Center City, Philadelphia. It's in the city. The stadium is in West Philadelphia, and you talk about there's some storied names that if people did go back and think about, like when I got my first letter to go to the University of Pennsylvania as a recruit, my dad was like, I brought home the letter, and my dad was like, oh my God, if you go there, if you can get in there, you're going there. I was like, well, Dad, what about Penn State? What about? He goes, son, they're not. Cut it. He goes, they're not calling you. He goes, if you get into Penn, you're going there, because he starts rattling off the names. Now, these names aren't going to mean a lot to many people unless you really dig into the history of Penn. Chuck Bednarik, okay, who is still today known as the last 60-minute man. He's the last player to go both ways in the NFL, and some say he's been on everything all-century NFL team with the Eagles, and he was 4-time All-American at Penn, first-round draft pick. Went and had an unbelievable career. Won the the NFL championship back in 1960. Chuck Bednarik is a legend, and he's still known as one of the greatest football players of all time, college or pro. There were guys like George Savitsky, who was an offensive lineman, who was a 4-time All-American at that level, which is all the big schools: Michigan, Nebraska, Penn State, USC. So Penn had a storied tradition. It just waned a little bit. So I still felt really good about being elected to into a Hall of Fame with people like that, like players that I look back and some of the great athletes that had come through the school. And my time at Penn was I when I was a sophomore, I was telling that funny story with Coach Reinbold about being on the freshman team and then coming up as a sophomore to join the varsity. The offensive line that year they had 4 first-team All Ivy League players and 1 second-team All Ivy League player. So the entire offensive line had All Ivy League accolades. So I was definitely not going to start on that team as a sophomore. I mean, they were. But what I did, Carl, is I learned from them. I absorbed everything they were doing, from their work ethic to the way they treated each other and the chemistry that they built. And I think that offensive line, along with some really good skill players, was the reason why we won the Ivy League that year, because they literally dominated up front. And we owned defenses from an offensive line perspective. So I really learned from them. And that, I think, that's part of the thing that happened to me in Kansas City. Like when I got there, I think about some of the players that I was able to learn from and be mentored by: John Alt, Rich Baldinger, Tim Grunhard. Think about the line that I backed up, in the interior, right? They called them the law firm, right? It was Dave Zott, Tim Grunhard, and Will Shields, who, Will Shields, 13 to 14-year career, all pro every year, 13 Pro Bowls, Hall of Famer. There's Tim right there. Tim was just elected into the Chiefs Hall of Fame. And so I had the opportunity to learn from the best and to be around the best. And, and John Alt was my roommate on the road a lot of it. And I would spend time listening to him and picking his brain. Funny John Alt story. This is how linemen think. John Alt, he and his wife were celebrating their wedding anniversary during the season once when we were getting ready to play the Chargers, and his wife said, "Hey, we're celebrating our anniversary. We'll get a hotel room downtown on a Monday night, because Tuesday is an NFL team's day off, and we'll spend Tuesday, in town, and we'll get a nice dinner for our anniversary, and we'll get away from the kids for a little bit." So Monday night they go to dinner. John is sitting on the edge of his bed in the hotel in downtown Kansas City, and he says to his wife, "We've got to go home." And she's like, "What are you talking about? We're celebrating our anniversary. We're in town. Let's go get a drink, or we'll go do this, we'll go do that." And he goes, "No, we got to go home. It's Leslie O'Neal week," because we were getting ready to play the Chargers. Like, that was John's mentality. Like, I have to stay so zeroed in on this season, in this game. I can't even be in this hotel room on a Monday night, which is our night off from practice and everything. We've got to go home. So it's like I tell that story because you learn from these players that are so dedicated to what they do, and I think that's the joy in it, right? It's in picking up those lessons, and that was like my time at Penn. Was really about learning about life and learning how to study and balance school and academics and also have fun playing football as well.
That's answered your question there, Carl. Brad, you have a question as well, I believe.
Yeah, I have a bit of a question. It's kind of two into one, really. Obviously, during your career, you've played in many venues, many stadiums, and obviously teams and the fan bases that you've come up against as well. Is there a particular fan base that you really enjoy playing at, a stadium that you really enjoy playing at, and is there one that you really, really did not want to go and play against?
All right. Okay. Let's set Arrowhead aside. Okay.
That
would be the easy answer. Everybody knows what that environment is like. I would say my favorite place to go play, from an environment perspective, I did get a chance to play it at Candlestick, but it wasn't my favorite game because I was actually not with the Chiefs. If you do look deep into the stats, I played in one game with the St. Louis Rams, and we played it at Candlestick. So it was a real treat to go there and play, except that we got our butts handed to us and we got demolished by the 49ers in 1996. And right before the game, Rich Brooks, who was our head coach, who had just come off of a college career, said, "Hey, listen, we're playing the 49ers. If we do everything right, have no penalties, make no mistakes, don't turn the ball over, we have a chance to beat these guys." And I was like, wait a minute, that's not the kind of confidence that I wanted going into that game. So I did get to play at Candlestick, which was really fun, but that was the only time. So I can't say that I really enjoyed that. And I was semi-hurt. I was trying to bounce back from my injuries, and it just didn't work out. So anyway, long story long. I have to be honest. I'd say at the time when I was playing, going to Mile High Stadium was probably the thing that I enjoyed doing the most, because at the time, even though the Raiders was the vaunted rivalry between the Chiefs, we really had something going with the Broncos back then in the 90s, especially with the John Elway, Joe Montana era, and Mile High was rocking. And that the Broncos faithful back then were really serious fans. And I'd have to say that was probably the game that I looked forward to the most from a road trip perspective. Always nice to go somewhere warm in the cold Kansas City winter. Head down to Miami or Tampa and play, or go get out to the West Coast. Buffalo was probably the most. If I had to say. And of course, that might be a good segue into our talk. Talks this week about the Chiefs and facing the Bills coming into Arrowhead. But going to Buffalo was rough. That fan base was rough. It was rough on our fans that used to go there. It was rough on us. We used to have before there was this in Orchard Park, but Rich Stadium where we would play. There was this long runway, I'll call it, or driveway that used to be the bus route into the stadium. And I'm telling you, it was long. I mean, I'm terrible at distances, but it might have been a good mile that we had to drive in on this long, where everybody would be tailgating. And we used to have over-under pools on the number of, I'll call it the good old American bird. We would have to, that people would flip us. And we used to have an over-under pool, and whoever would come closest would win the pot. So we would be counting the number of people that would be flipping us the bird as we were driving down this mile. Then that was the number one over-under pool. The other one was how many snowballs would hit the bus as we were coming in. So we would count the snowballs that would hit the bus, and so it was a rough place to play. They were loud. It was always cold. Even in like a fall game, it was cold in Buffalo, and I have that really, really rough memory of that game when Joe Montana got knocked out in the AFC Championship game. I actually got knocked out in that game as well, and I was long snapping. I was the long snapper, and I snapped the ball to the punter, and Louis Aguiar, and I'm looking down the field and I'm seeing Steve Tasker, who was their punt returner, and I'm thinking to myself, here's what I'm going to do. This is where you get overconfident in life when you're an athlete. I said, because nobody ever blocked me, because there were two of us. We were the last two offensive linemen to be long snappers in the NFL. It was me and a guy named Danny Villa. And we were the last two actual offensive linemen who long snap, because it went more to the tight end linebacker type body type after that. So I'm running down the field, and no one ever blocked me, because who the heck was I tackling at 6'5", 305 pounds, clocked on a calendar, right? And I'm running down the field, and in my mind I said, all right, I'm going to strip the ball out of Steve Tasker's hands. I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to run the ball in, and I'm going to tie this game up all myself. After I snapped the ball to the punter. Bad mistake. Bad mistake. Because generally when I was running down the field, I would keep my head on a swivel. And this time I didn't. I put the blinders on, and all I could see was Steve Tasker as I was chugging down the field. Well, their fullback, Cardwell Gardner, had something else to think about that. Cardwell Gardner was probably 6'3", 250-pound fullback. So he was a perfect missile. Because sometimes defensive backs would try to block me on a punt return, and I didn't really have a problem with them. And sometimes a bigger offensive lineman or defensive lineman would try to block me on a punt return, and we were just a couple of big slugs just running down the field. Nothing big there. But when a guy who is a human missile at that kind of weight and speed hits you in the side and hits you right through your ear hole, I got up and went to the wrong huddle. I ended up in the Buffalo Bills huddle. And I ended up walking towards the Buffalo Bills sideline. I knew things weren't really going good for us at that point in that game. But anyway, long story long, again, Buffalo was a really, really rough place to play. And it was a tough environment, and they had some really good Buffalo teams back then as well.
Like to welcome Ryan. Ryan's joined us, another 49ers fan. See, we are starting to get some more 49. I've got more reinforcements coming. More reinforcements. Ryan,
Hey, Ryan,
good morning, sir. How are you?
How you doing, Nick? What's up, Carl? What's up, Paul? What's up, Scott? What's up, Brad? Nice to meet you, Joe. Nice to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you, Ryan. Pleasure.
My only question I could think of, I don't know if you guys answered it or not. The only one I could think of was, what was best Joe Montana play that he played for Kansas City Chiefs? Do you think
The best play?
Yeah, best play by far for him.
Oh,
that's the only question I have.
No, I gotta go with fake 16 George U Slam. And because I was the U and I got the score. No, I'm just kidding. That's my favorite Joe Montana play, and I still remember the name of the play today. The best Joe Montana play, I would have to say, if I'm going through the annals, like my favorite Joe Montana game, okay, of playing with him, okay, was in 1993 in the AFC Divisional playoffs against the Houston Oilers. We went into that game double-digit underdogs. We had come off a game where I'm going to tell you about my favorite play, single play, but 1993 was a magical year, right? I mean, Joe Montana and Marcus Allen come to the Chiefs. We go into the stratosphere as a team. We win in an overtime victory in the wild card round the week before against the Steelers. I'll backtrack to that game. And it was, a home playoff win, which by the way, up until Scott, a couple years ago was the first home playoff win in 20 some years or something.
Yep.
So we have that home playoff win. Then we go down to Houston in the House of Pain. Buddy Ryan's vaunted 46 defense, Warren Moon and the run and shoot offense. The Oilers had won 11 games in a row. We go into that game. Joe Montana says, no. He pulls a Dikembe Mutombo and is like, no. He's like, we are not leaving this place without a victory. He picked that defense apart. I mean, he was so cool in his preparation that week and so confident. And it was a prepared confidence. It wasn't an overconfidence. It was a prepared confidence. And I'm telling you, to watch him surgically beat that team himself, because our defense played well, but to watch him single-handedly surgically remove the heart of that Oilers team was magical. It was the Joe Montana of old that I grew up watching. My favorite play has to be the week before, 4th down, game on the line. I mean, the Chiefs haven't had a playoff victory before that until you're going back into like the 70s, 60s, right? It's like bad times. As Scott will tell you, and as a Chiefs fan, bad era, right? Here we are playing the Steelers, 4th down, we're losing at home, and Joe Montana hits Tim Barnett in the back of the end zone on 4th down to send the game to overtime after we had missed a game-winning field goal before that. And it was just like, are you kidding me? Right? Like, and then we kicked that game winner, and it's like, to watch him, and I got to be honest, like, nobody was on pins and needles when Joe took that snap on 4th down. It was like, okay, yeah, we're just going to tie it up right here, 4th down. We're going to score. He's going to find a way. And I have to say that, like, personally, I mean, I know he had a long string of plays. You go back to his 49ers days, the catch. And, as a matter of fact, I was just YouTubing the other day, 50 of Joe Montana's greatest plays. It's out there on YouTube. And actually the touchdown I had against the 49ers was number 50. So I made it into the top 50 Joe Montana plays. But like, he had so many, but those are two that I really remember, Ryan, that really, really stuck with me as a one single play, and then a game where I got to watch the magic. And then, of course the 49ers game against Steve Young, where he's like, okay, I know there's a history here. I know this whole Steve Young thing, and we've got this, and the tension, and him being traded and kind of being a little bit cast aside by the 49ers organization in a way. Like, that was another one that really stuck with me. The Elway Montana shootout in Denver at Mile High, which was the first time that Marty Schottenheimer had ever won at Mile High. And basically Joe was saying, Marty, I'm getting you this win. Like, I do not want you to not win at Mile High, or I don't want to not to have won at Mile High ever again. So he got that win. Like, he just had so much magic about him. He was awesome.
I got one more question to bounce off that. Yeah. I want to make sure I get this through, and I wanted to think while you're talking. Was he ever nervous at all in that field?
My saying about Joe Montana was he was as cool as the other side of the pillow. And the reason why, Ryan, is not because he had like he was missing a gene or something. Like the reason why Joe Montana was never nervous is because number one, he exuded confidence in all of his teammates. Number one. So he absorbed all of the things that his team was doing. But I think the biggest attribute of why he was never nervous was because he was always so prepared. Like that to me is that is the number one arch enemy of nervousness and anxiety is being prepared and being as prepared as you possibly can be. I think that's the potion or the recipe for eliminating as much nervousness as you possibly can. It's by being prepared. Because once you've done that, once you've done everything you can do to prepare for something, you just put it up there and say, okay, I did everything I could. I spent every amount of emotion, mental and physical energy to prepare for this moment. So being nervous is, it's kind of like I call it when I coached high school football, I used to tell the kids that I coached, I would say, you don't win games on Friday night. You win games in January in the weight room. You win games at training camp when you run that one extra play when it's hot, you don't feel like running it again. That's when you win. And I think that's what Joe Montana exuded. And Ryan, really tell you one more funny story about that. Like when I would go in for these touchdowns, right, and go in as a tackle eligible, Joe Montana, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I alluded to it. Like he never looked at me and like with wide eyes and said, "All right, big guy, are your hands clean? Are they sweaty? Are you going to catch this? Are you ready for this?" Like I joked earlier, he called the play like I was Jerry Rice, and I wasn't, but he called the play like I was. And to me, that is to me, that's really the answer to the question.
I got you. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Thank you.
Ryan,
Thank you.
absolutely,
Yeah.
bud, absolutely.
Very interesting what you say about Joe, because Jesse Sapolo, when we had him on, and we talked about the famous drive where he spotted John Candy in the stands, etc. Just how cool he was and how much confidence they had in him. And if everyone, he had ice running through his veins, obviously that. And it's quite funny because apparently Joe Burrow is now being called Joe Cool, which I think is a bit disrespectful because there's only one Joe Cool and there's only one GOAT. And we're talking about the same person. My favourite Joe Montana play, sprint right option, obviously, aka the catch to 87, God rest his soul. And that game you're talking about, Houston, I was trying to Google it earlier. They call that the killer on the carpet game, I believe, because Montana was getting whacked left, right, and center, and it didn't matter. He got up and he still produced. And that again, that was like playing on concrete. I'm getting not like the stadiums now where it's all nice and soft if you fall over. It literally was like falling on concrete.
You're totally right, Nick. And I'll tell you a funny story about Joe Montana. And this is a little inside baseball. And I've gotten this in bits and pieces. Of course, I wasn't in the room, but after the 93 season, Joe was actually going to retire. He was going to hang it up. The Buffalo game really set him back. I mean, you look at him and you look at the footage of how hard he got hit and hitting that cold, frozen tundra of turf at Rich Stadium in Buffalo. Joe was done. And you have to remember in the AFC West back then, right? We knew we were going to be playing Buffalo a lot, right? So we knew that was a game that we were going to see them again. And when you looked at our schedule back then in 1994, we had turf, right? So number one, he's going to play 8 regular season games and hopefully a postseason game on turf. So let's pretend we're not going to go to the playoffs. And 1994, he's looking at the schedule and he's going 8 games on the Arrowhead turf, which by the way was much like most other Astro turfs back then, brutal. Okay, brutally hard and harsh. And I played on it my whole college career. I played on that kind of turf. So 8 games there. We got to go to Seattle, turf, right? And you go line by line in some of the games that we were playing. 1994, we were going to play the Saints, turf, right? Houston had turf. Buffalo had turf. And you just look at all of these games, and Joe basically said, and this was the story that we had heard, and I bits and pieced this together from various sources. But Joe went into Lamar Hunt's office, the owner, and said, "Mr. Hunt, I can't do it. I can't play upwards of 10 to 11 games again on turf. It's just too much." And Mr. Hunt totally appreciated that and empathized with it. So about 3 minutes later, he had George Toma on the phone and said, George Toma, who was a legendary groundskeeper, used to always do all the World Series games, plus he was the Kansas City Royals and Arrowhead Stadium kind of groundskeeper. He said, Mr. Hunt says, "Okay, George, how fast can you turn Arrowhead into grass?" Now, you have to put into context that was going to cost the Chiefs a lot of money, not just to put the grass in, but then it meant no more big concerts for a while. Like, he had to shut that stadium down and really think about what the ramifications were going to be. And he looked at Joe Montana across the desk, from what we heard, and said to George, "Can you do it?" And Mr. Hunt said to Joe, "All right, Joe, if we make grass happen by May and the turf is gone, will you play one more year?" And the story goes that Joe agreed to that, and that's why he did end up playing that 94 season, was because Lamar Hunt literally had bulldozers pulling that turf up days to get rid of it. And like, I just love that, right? I love that coming together of an organization that he's too important of an asset, and that says a lot about him. So, kind of like going in with that little story, Nick, as far as like what that meant, right? Playing on that turf and how hard it was. That's why Arrowhead's grass, and it still is today.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that Houston game, I want to say 15, 20 times, and it's brutal. And a lot of players from back then, obviously now you included, have said just how it literally was concrete and then a little bit of felt on the top of it, literally, and you felt everything. And and obviously I've seen the great Joe Montana games on grass at Candlestick, and sometimes that was more like playing on a muddy field than it was obviously playing on turf. But even I winced at how every player, not just obviously Joe, but it must have taken its toll on everyone playing on that kind of surface.
Oh yeah. The only time I ever saw Joe hit the turf harder than that, that Giants game when he was with the 49ers, and in that game and the Buffalo game, was when we went out for an offensive line quail and pheasant hunt. And we used to go out every year on our off day during the bye week. There was this restaurateur who had a farm, and I have to be honest, I never shot a gun until I was 23 years old, and I went on my first O-line hunt with the offensive line group, and we used to take videos of it. So our videographer for the team used to come out with us, and we would be out there, goofing around, doing some hunting. And again, so I shoot a gun left-handed. So my offensive line buddies gave me a right-handed gun because I didn't know any different. And every time the shotgun shells would eject, they would hit me right above the eye. And I would say, "I really don't understand why people like this. This is not fun to be hit in the eye with a hot shotgun shell." And so one day we were sitting around. So we used to have our meeting rooms, and there was a videotape sitting on with the Raiders scout team, a tape, and then like the Broncos scout tape. There was this tape labeled 1992 offensive line hunt. So listen, there was some adult beveraging going on, with this, right? It's just like a scene out of that movie, North Dallas 40, if anybody's ever seen that famous football movie with Mac Davis and Nick Nolte. And so Joe Montana pops the tape in, and he says, "What's this?" And he's like, first thing he says is, so what we would do is we would go out hunt, and then it was a restaurateur that owned this horse farm and all this lake and land. So we would fish, we would hunt, and he would bring in his executive chef, and he would make us these awesome Kansas City steaks, right? So it was a big day for us, right? For offensive linemen who only got their names in the paper for getting a holding call, this was a big day to celebrate for us, right? So Joe sees all the fun that we're having, riding ATVs, just being, big kids, right? 300-pound, 12-year-olds at this point. He says, I got to have some of that. He's like, I'm coming. He's like, when's the next one? So we're like, oh, we have it on the books for, our bye week. We do it on the Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. And Joe's like, count me in, guys. That looks like fun. Well, needless to say, Joe was standing on a berm. Now, if social media existed or ESPN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 existed back then, I'm sure this would have made the news. But Joe and a couple of guys were standing on a berm when one of Dave Zott, one of our line buddies, Brittany, his dog, flushed out a bunch of pheasant that flew right above Joe's head. And 9 guns were pointed right at Joe Montana. And Joe Montana hit the ground. Like I said, I've seen him hit the ground a lot hard, like at Houston and Buffalo. He went down so fast, and he army crawled so quickly out of there. We were all like, Joe, we've never seen you run that fast. And he ran back to this gentleman, Nabil Haddad's house, where everybody was, getting dinner ready, faster than I've ever seen him run on the field. And he's like, I'm never coming back to this again. So that was Joe's one and only time that he came out on our famous O-line hunt. And, I think back, I get a pit in my stomach thinking about like what that would have been like to say, we were the guys that fired shots at Joe Montana, that forced his early retirement. And, it was like but that's, again, one more example of the way that guy was. He just wanted to be a part of that group. And so what did Joe get us for his retirement gift? Joe got us a Benelli semi-automatic shotgun with our name and number engraved on it. It's probably my most treasured item that I own. Because and again, remember, I'd never shot a gun until I was in my 20s. So, and I just wasn't a gun person. And so like my friend Lindsey Knapp, who was another backup lineman, we're going to this. Joe says, I want to meet you at the sports bar near the stadium. It was called S.A. Sanders. He said, I want to meet you guys. I'm going to celebrate my retirement with you guys. And I have some gifts for you. So my friend Lindsey and we're skipping out of the stadium going, we're getting a Rolex, baby. We're getting a Rolex, baby. Yes, yes. Right. So we're thinking we're getting a nice Rolex watch, because that was like the hot thing back then, that like Troy Aikman got his lineman and Emmitt Smith got his lineman. Like we're getting a Rolex watch, right? Because I'm walking around with my lineman, Timex that, I'd had from when I was in college. And we walk into the sports bar, and there's these big long boxes with these big bows on them piled up on the sports bar table there that Joe had got a little room for us. And I walk in, and Lindsey and I looked at each other and said, well, unless that's a watch you can hang on your wall, I don't think it's a watch. And so he's like, yeah, I wonder what it is. And so we opened it up, and it was this Benelli, they're Italian-made semi-automatic shotguns, and it's an Eagle, a competition like rifle shotgun. So it shows you how much I know about guns. And it's literally my prized possession that I have, because it has my number inside.
Could have been worse. You could have walked into a lot of violin cases like the mafia used to do with the submachine guns in there. That would have been a lot worse.
I've got to ask. Was it left-handed as well?
What's that?
Was the Benelli left-handed as well?
Unfortunately, he didn't know that much about the way that I shot guns, Brad. And it is a right-handed gun. And to show you what, and there's an Italian term for somebody who's acts like the fool, like the jabroni that I was. When I tried to assemble it, I shot the mechanism through my wall. So my wife said. So we're in our townhouse in Kansas City, and I take the gun, I bring it home, and I'm like, look at this, hon. Joe Montana gave his gun. It's got this little arrowhead with my number in it, and it says to Joe Valerio from Joe Montana. Like, come on, like it doesn't get any better than that, right? It is literally. Besides the footballs that I have signed by Joe that I scored, those are my real prized possession. But this is like the gift prized possession, and so I'm putting this thing together, and there's a mechanism that has a tail that goes down into the firing thing. Scott's shaking his head like he knows what I'm talking about. I am such a newbie with this stuff. So I put it in, and I didn't have the safety on, and I accidentally hit the trigger, and I shot the mechanism I shot it through my wall, Scott, and Scott's laughing. And my wife's like, "Oh my God, give me that thing. I'm taking that to a professional. You cannot give me that. Like, you're gonna kill yourself. You're gonna kill me.
Yeah, you're gonna kill yourself or kill someone else. Give me that gun now."
So we still laugh about that every time and when people come into the house, they'll look up at that and they'll say, "Wow, that's really cool." And I'll explain the story and I'll say, "Don't worry, it's not loaded and the mechanism isn't in it. It's in my wall in Kansas City."
Yeah, I can grab it now with confidence and know that I'm not going to maim anybody if I fire it accidentally because the safety's off.
Exactly.
Your touchdown balls, do you have them in cases or are they just on the side? You do.
I do. I have them in cases. Alan Wright, who is the current head equipment manager, was one of our equipment managers back then. And I was on the extra point, field goal team. So I had to act very quickly after that to make sure that I got those balls to Alan real fast because I had to get back out, on the field after the celebrations that, we had. And so I made sure Alan was such a champ and saved those for me and kept them safe, which was really cool. And of course I got Joe to sign them for me. And I keep them in a special place, and it's just a really cool thing. I'm thinking about making an NFT out of them. I don't know. Someone said you got to get into NFTs. I'm like, I don't know anything about that, but they said you should make an NFT of those balls, and I'm thinking, all right, well, maybe I'll do that. I'll make a digital copy of them. So if any of you know about anything about NFTs and you think there'd be a viable market for that, I don't know. Maybe I'll try. But
I would say in Kansas. I don't think anyone in San Francisco would. Want them, but I'm guessing in Kansas they would be hot commodities. And it's interesting what you say about those balls being your prized possession. When the Niners played Jacksonville at Wembley, I don't know how many 5 years ago, whenever it was. I actually got the game ball that Frank Gore scored the first touchdown.
Oh wow, and that's awesome!
That's my most, and I've got Joe Montana's autograph. I've got quite a few autographs, and I've still got the mud on the ball.
Oh, that's the best.
Off the turf. I haven't cleaned it. I don't want it autographed. It's just raw and it's there. And every time, and it's really funny because me and my friend who I started this channel with, I dragged him along to the game, and I always remember it was cold. It was a 6 p.m. kickoff, so it was in October, so it's very cold. Obviously, we'd be drinking all day. You can guess the scenario. We're sat there, and all of a sudden, he scores and he throws the ball into the crowd, and I. Like you catching your first pass, all of a sudden I was like Dwight Clark doing the catch as the ball came up, and I thought, "There's no way I'm not catching this." And even I, to this day, don't know how I caught that ball.
That is fantastic.
Everyone's like, "You got to throw it back. You got to throw it back." And obviously, I won't use the expletives that I used at the time. Yeah. I said that there's no way that ball is going back down to the ball boy for them to throw me a spare up. I said, I'm keeping it. And everyone around me was laughing. So I get the guy, obviously not nowhere near as good as catching 4 TDs from the goat. But yeah, to me, I mean, and I take it out sometimes. It's got because it was a Jaguars home game. It's got the Jaguars logo on the ball, but it's just to know that that is very special. But anyway, we digress. I think it's about time we pick some games in the divisional round. Now, we always save the 49ers to laugh because obviously it's my show and I pick when we do it. But anyway, I will go, as Joe is our guest, let's go and start, obviously, with the Bills down at Arrowhead. Carl, this has got a nice spicy game written all over it.
This is the best game out of all 4 by a country mile. Do you know what? No, I'm gonna let our guest of honor make the first pick first rather than me first. So Joe.
Oh, Carl, that's nice of you. Well, nice I think, yeah, exactly. No pun intended. I'll take it. Handoff. It to me, I think, and I'm not taking anything away from Tennessee, and in their number one seed them, or taking anything away from the Bengals that are having a little bit of a magical run right now. I believe this is the AFC Championship, and I'll go out on a limb and put my neck out and say that I think this is in fact the AFC Championship, and whoever wins this game will end up in the Super Bowl. We'll certainly make that prediction next week, depending on how that other game goes. But that's how I believe. I think the Chiefs have a lot more going on right now than the Bills do. I think they're peaking a little faster, even though the Bills have a lot of weapons. And I think the world of Josh Allen. I think the Chiefs are going to win this game by a touchdown. And I think it's going to be what I would call a mildly high-scoring game. It's going to be 31-24 if I had to put a score in there. And I think the Chiefs will set the tempo. And I think the Chiefs will probably score first because they have been moving their offense more towards that. Their starts generally are slow because Eric Bieniemy, the coordinator, likes to he really likes to pick a team apart in those first couple of series to find out what's going. It's like bait fishing, He sticks the bait out there to see what's going to happen, and then he starts to get the offense rolling. So I think it's going to be 31-24. My favorite thing about this game is going to be the reactions of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I always joke about, like, people say, what a quarterback matchup. It's not like these two guys are going to be wrestling at the 50-yard line, and tackling each other. They don't play against each other. But what they will be doing is reacting to each other. And you can't deny that this is now the what I would call the Manning, kind of Tom Brady relationship that was of the other 2000s. That's what I think this new matchup is going to be like. And I think they're going to be reacting to each other. So it'll be really interesting to see if Patrick starts hot, how Josh reacts, and vice versa. If they win the kickoff and they get the ball first and Josh is able to put a drive together, how is Patrick going to be able to react to the speed and pace of the Bills offense? But I think the Chiefs are going to set the pace and they're going to win 31-24. That's a long analysis, but I think that's how I see it going.
It's interesting. See, I've got another one of my Niner buddies just turned up just to skew it even further towards the Niners. You see, I put the bat signal up. Dion, how you doing, brother?
Good morning, fellas. Let's see here. Brad, I don't know you, but nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Looks like you are a Chiefs fan, if I'm not mistaken by your colors. That's unfortunate. Mr. Valerio.
Hey,
Dion. I don't know what it is about you, bro, but I feel like you should be an NFL GM somewhere.
Oh, my goodness.
Doesn't he have like a GM look to him or something?
That's the hair. It's the hair.
It is. He's got the Mel Kiper hair. That's Mel Kiper.
But I like to think of Tan France from Queer Eye. Actually, that's where I like to think of my hair. Okay. Tan Fran from Queer Eye. That's my look.
Nothing wrong with that, man. But nice to meet both of you. Good morning to everyone. This is a crazy day, man. Sorry, you guys can talk. I got a damn trash truck outside of my apartment.
Yeah, we heard right on cue, Dion. I don't know if you've been watching part of the show. Joe was an offensive lineman for Kansas City who caught 4 TDs from the one and only GOAT. So
you caught 4 TDs from Joe Montana? That's awesome, man. That is awesome. In my eyes, sir, you have just jumped to another level.
Stop.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I've been watching the Peacock special that he has, and like for us, Joe is gold. Like he can't be touched. For 49er fans, we feel that he is the GOAT. He's the greatest. And I know we traded him to Kansas City in favor of Steve Young and whatnot, but he's still, to us, he's very near and dear to our hearts. And for anyone to be able to catch a touchdown pass from him, that's an amazing thing. And whenever we see people who have done such like that, this show is very respectful. They appreciate anybody who comes on, and Nick is amazing at reaching out and trying to touch people. I mean, he's had Jesse Sapolo on several times. Now having you on here, man, that's you become royalty in our eyes just from catching touchdown passes. And then everybody on here is nodding, and we're just being serious because of how much we appreciate Joe. We appreciate you for putting your hands out and catching that ball. I hope you kept them too, because I'd have looked at Joe and been like, "These are mine. I just from you. I'm not giving up these touchdown passes."
He had plenty of them. You know, he had he had 197 just with Jerry Rice filling up his basement. So,
I mean, you know, that's great, man. Hey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm happy to be here. Chiefs fan. I honestly, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to say I picked against you. I picked Buffalo to win. I feel like it is their year. I really do. I feel like it's their year. But I picked this game. This is going to be a shootout.
Yeah.
Both of these quarterbacks have seriously live arms. Josh Allen can throw the ball a mile. So can Patrick Mahomes. The only difference is when Josh Allen does it, it looks like there's just a little bit of effort. When Patrick Mahomes does it, it looks like there's no effort. Like he just woke up one morning and threw an 80-yard bomb, and that was just what happened. You know, I figured he was probably doing dropbacks in his mom's stomach when he was just being before he was. Should I say?
But there was a lot of effort in Patrick's throws early on, and you know that's where the Chiefs' turning point happened this season. Is just so you know, even though I played for the Chiefs, and I you know, and I follow the Chiefs, I cover them on a podcast, I talk about them all the time. I actually, much to my Chiefs fans' dismay, I actually picked them to lose to the Bills earlier in the season. So I'm not just a homer. You know, I'm not just somebody who just willy-nilly says, "Oh, well, the Chiefs are going to win this game." I had a feeling in that game that they were not going to win. For the reasons that Patrick was really, really pressing at that point, and he wasn't throwing effortlessly because he was trying to carry the entire weight of the Midwestern part of the United States on his shoulders because their defense was playing so poorly. Mm-hmm. And when they met the Bills in that game, you know, the Bills have gone through what I would call a roller coaster ride. You know, like when they're peaking, they peak. But then when they valley, you know, it's like up, down, up, down, up, down. Now the Chiefs, what they did is they went way down and then they're rising. And that's why I feel like the Chiefs have a little bit more of an edge in this game, is that they are rising faster than the Bills because the Bills have kind of gone boom, 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 boom. So, you know, that's my take on it. But I totally respect the fact if any fan base goes into this game thinking it's a lock, you're crazy.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I'd love the analysis right there, and you're right, man. And the one thing that I can say is it would feel good to see Buffalo in the Super Bowl, but it also is going to be scary because of what happened in the 90s. Like, this is a team that set a record nobody wants to set.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, you know. And I've always said certain things. I always feel like if Buffalo wins the Super Bowl, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith, like these guys need an honorary ring for the time that they spent and what they've done. I've always said if we win a Super Bowl, Frank Gore needs to get a ring because of what he did for us as a running back. So it's going to be a hell of a game no matter what. And that's probably going to be the most entertaining game of the weekend. You know, I know for last weekend, even people who didn't like the 49er Cowboy game watched because of the history, you know, and then in the AFC, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the better game to watch. Don't get me wrong. Tennessee and Cincinnati are going to be a good game. It's Derrick Henry just coming back, all that good stuff. But just to watch these two young men, even though, as you stated earlier, they don't necessarily battle it out, just to watch them lead their teams and see what they can do against each other is going to be crazy. And the Honey Badger is going to be out there hunting. He's hungry. He is not. He doesn't want to stop at one Super Bowl. I'm sure he would rather have another. And Nick, just a quick spot. Have you noticed Jerick McKinnon doesn't have tired legs now, huh? He seems to wake up and know how to play football. But when we had him, he couldn't get on the field to save his damn life. And then he walked away from us so ungratefully. so ungratefully.
But he
on
walked away
Instagram Live.
slowly because
Did you
he
see?
had
Did you
so
see that,
much
Joe?
money in his damn pockets. That's why
Did
he
you see
walked
that,
away
Joe?
slowly.
Yeah, Mr. McKinnon decided to walk away from us in a very disrespectful way. He was on Instagram Live with the wide back now known as Debo Samuel. And he says, "Hey, are you coming back?" And he yells, "Fuck no, on to the next team." You've been on our team for 3 years. Unfortunately, you were injured. Injuries happen. I get it. 3 straight years, we lined your pockets. And you have the nerve to be on something where people can visually see that and say something like that to a franchise who basically fed your family for 3 years and didn't cut you. And
it's Dion, it's one of the negative sides of free agency. You know, it's just and those kind of situations put a real spotlight on the negative side of it. You know, it's not like the old days where, you know, you rooted for your guys year in, year out. Like the rolling revolving door of players sometimes I think has been, so when I find fans like you and myself who follow teams, you know, like I still love my Philadelphia Eagles because that's where I grew up. But I think back to my Eagles, and they were guys that played for the team for 10, 12 years, never thinking about going anywhere else, you know? And I miss that. I do miss that. I'm not trying to be negative on the NFL, but I miss the old days. I know that sounds very nostalgic, but you're right. That is one of the definite negative sides of this whole free agency thing, is that you get sometimes players get themselves in some sticky situations like that. It's a sticky wicket, and you know, frustrating.
we are one and the same because I missed that too. That's how our teams were built.
Yeah.
Eddie D, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. Eddie D, man, one of the greatest owners of all time. He built that team like a family. The man knew your people. He knew your family. He knew your kids. He knew their names. He knew birthdays. This guy built it like a family. And all he asked for in return was, hey, you guys want to be in these 5-star hotels. You want to fly in this nice plane. Just all I need you to do is give me some W's, baby. I need a couple of Super Bowls, and I need to make sure that you're consistently fighting for such. If you can give me that, I will give you as much as I possibly can. And that's where the people screw up. Go ahead, Nick.
You say that, Dion. Obviously, before you joined, we were talking about Joe near the end at KC, and Lamar Hunt changed from the AstroTurf to grass in the stadium overnight. Well, not literally overnight, to try and keep Joe. So, again, I think that goes to show you what you don't sort of hear a lot of these owners do, and I'm talking old school, not obviously the newer ones. And just out of interest, the handicap on this game, they're only giving Kansas City -1.5, and normally the home team is -3 before you even start. So that's kind of tells you how close this game really could be. Ryan, who have you got?
Got you. Here you go. Got Chiefs and what was your other team? I'm sorry. Brain
The
fart.
Bills.
Bills. Yeah, I got the Bills. I'm sorry, Scott. Got the Bills. Sorry, man. Sorry, man. Sorry.
Paul.
I am looking forward to this one. I think Scott will be happy with my answer. I do think Kansas City will win. Like Dion said, Joe Allen, Patrick Mahomes, the UK fan base love both of them quarterbacks. I think it's going to be a shootout. It's another late game for us, but I can see Scott's boys going on to the next round. So,
Carl?
Yeah, I'm going to take Kansas City to win this game. Obviously, we know the Bills won in week 3, but many months of games have passed by since then. Back then, the Chiefs' offense couldn't get anything going, and Steve Spagnuolo and the defense were in a bit of a funk. I just think Buffalo, they're coming off a humongous high of beating my team, obviously, last week. They've played their equivalent to the Super Bowl, and I think they're about to hit rock bottom. So I'm going to take Kansas City.
Right. Well, as usual, I am going to let my heart and head decide who I pick. Now, last night or yesterday afternoon, I had a little snooze and I had a dream. I had a dream, people. And I dreamt it's Niners Bills Super Bowl. So I'm going to stick with my dream. I do apologize, Joe, Scott, Brad. Probably won't come true. And I expect the Bills will probably get waxed tonight. And then that'll be my dream right out the window. And I'll never dream again. And I won't believe it. But I'm going to stick. I'm going to stick with my dream. So I will have to go with the Bills. Because as I say, I think it's going to be a Bills-Niners Super Bowl. Scott, am I mad?
Yeah, I don't know how many drinks you had before you went to bed last night, but it sounds like a couple too many. The Bills are a good team, but to me, and it seems like all of the experts, right, and the media are picking it's 9 out of 10 are picking the Bills. I don't really see where the Bills have the advantage. The Chiefs have the better quarterback. The Chiefs have the better coach. They have the experience. They've got the better playmakers. I would say they have the better offensive line. When the Chiefs played the Bills in Week 5, they didn't have Chris Jones, who's their best defensive lineman. They didn't have Charvarius Ward, who was their best cornerback in the secondary. Willie Gay played limited snaps, was dealing with a foot injury. I don't know if you'd say he's their best linebacker. Nick Bolton, you might make an argument there that he's the best, but Willie Gay is the most athletic linebacker.
Sorry, Scott, just to also add to Willie Gay, he also murdered a Hoover in the week as well.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
How dare you murder Henry? How dare you murder Henry?
Yeah, I don't
God's
know, man.
I murdered a wall with a Hoover.
Right. It was disappointing. So they've got the coaching advantage. I think at the line of scrimmage on the defensive line, the Chiefs didn't have Melvin Ingram yet in that first game in Week 5. The Chiefs have the better record against a far tougher schedule than the Bills had. The Bills won 2 games against playoff teams this year. The Chiefs won 6. I just don't see like this narrative that the Bills are clearly the better team and should be favored to win. You brought up the betting line, Nick. It started at 3.5, and has come down to 1.5 or 1, which means a lot of people are betting on the Chiefs. I just don't see where everybody's picking the Bills like they're clearly the better team. I have the Chiefs have the edge. Now, give it a slight edge. I'm not saying they're overwhelmingly the favorite, but they are the favorite. They're playing at home. They've got Patrick Mahomes. The only edge you could say really that the Bills have is defensively overall. But when you look at their schedule, they played 2 quarterbacks that I would put in the top 15 in the league. That was Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. The Patrick Mahomes, that game, the Chiefs turned the ball over 4 times, but the Chiefs were moving the ball almost at will on that defense. And the other game against a legit offense with a top 10 quarterback, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, they put up almost 500 yards and 40 points on them. So I don't know how good the Bills defense really is. I mean, when you're playing Tua twice and you're playing Davis Mills and you're playing the Jaguars, I mean, they lost to the Jaguars. They lost to the Steelers at home. I'm picking the Chiefs to win this game. I'm thinking they win 35-24, somewhere near. I think they win by 7-10. I just think they have the advantage in almost every key area.
And can I say, I hadn't been drinking and I didn't have coronavirus either, my homie, the goat. It was a daydream that just I thought about things and I picked it, and I've got to stick with that pick. Brad, what's your take on all of this?
I want to try and keep it short and sweet, really. It's going to come down to 2 factors, really. It's going to be, what Scott's just said about the defense. The defense really has to show up for the Chiefs, I think, to really kind of keep this game tight. But also, I think the pressures that the 2 quarterbacks can handle. We've seen it before with Josh Allen. Is he going to have that similar kind of play or game where we saw it, I think was it the championship game a few years ago, or like last year, something like that. Anyway, I can't remember what it was, but there was definitely a game where Josh Allen kind of didn't. I think Arrowhead got under his skin, I think, a little bit, and I think it's how he handles that pressure in this game, because we know what Patrick Mahomes can do, and he seems to have sorted himself out this year, where he has been taking the underneath routes a lot more. He seems to have been understanding it a little bit more because defenses have been showing him those underneath routes a lot more. And I think it's just down to those two factors. I think if Josh Allen can really overcome his fear of Arrowhead, then I think that will be one of the defining moments in this game. And like I said, the defense is going to be really interesting to see as well, because the Chiefs' defense seems to have got its swagger back a lot more as well. And I think that's going to be a real kind of key moment in this game, because the Chiefs can do takeaways. They can do turnovers quite a bit. And yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be close. I think it's going to be 28-21 to the Chiefs.
Interesting. Rams versus the Bucks is the next game up. Carl, Rams, Bucks. Your old boy Tom Brady is 14-2 career in the divisional round.
Yep. There's a couple of question marks on this. The first one of all is the Buccaneers offensive line. Ryan Jensen, the center, and Tristan Wirfs, the right tackle, are questionable to play. In that game against the Eagles, what you saw, as soon as Tristan Wirfs went out, that offensive line crumbled. I mean, they gave up 4 sacks when Tristan Wirfs went off the field. That is not good for Brady at all. Also, Brady has lost his last 2 games against Sean McVay and the Rams. So there's something to add into context there. I know a lot of people say you don't bet against Tom Brady. But Rams last week, they put a beat down on Arizona, and it wasn't just the offense. The defense turned up. We've been waiting for that defense to turn up all season. And then now you've got the likes of Aaron Donald and Von Miller to deal with on an offensive line that's completely banged up. I'm going to take the upset here, and I'm going to take the Rams.
I don't think it would be an upset, if I'm honest, and I'll just chime in with mine quickly.
Yeah.
I really, out of these two teams, and I know it's a big if the Niners beat Green Bay, who would I like to face out of these two teams? I personally would like to face the Buccaneers, even though we have McVay's number. One day that streak is going to run out. So I'm going to take the Buccaneers just because if the Niners do go into Lambeau and win, which we'll touch on shortly, I'd much rather play the Buccaneers than the Rams, and our luck runs out, even though Debo and Shanahan own the Rams. I don't want to go to the well once too often. Joe, what do you think? Rams, Bucks.
I'm going to go again with what I guess technically from Vegas standards would be the upset. I think the injuries that the Buccaneers offense is dealing with right now are going to set them back a little bit, and I think the Rams are going to be able to put together a rush package, much like when the Eagles beat the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl in 2018, I think, or not the Buccaneers, but beat Tom Brady and the Patriots. Tom Brady does not like to get rushed in the middle. He is not effective, and I think the strength of the Rams defense is really in that interior and the ability to blitz from the middle, as opposed to Tom Brady. It's just noise when you come at him from the outside, and without having Tristan Wirfs, I know that again I'm going to be put on my offensive line hat and how hard that is to go without your the one guy on your offensive line that you really depend on to protect you. I think that's enough. I think that's enough to really set this aside. Now, granted, Matt Stafford's going to have to play he's going to have to play a perfect game management game. right? And that's real. I think that's what it kind of like comes down to, is that, yeah, Tom's going to have his hands full defensively with the Rams, but it's really what Matt Stafford's going to be able to do to not lose that game. So, but I think they're going to have enough. I think I can see the Rams winning in what would be considered a Las Vegas upset, because they're the underdog going in to Raymond James Field down in Tampa Bay. But I still see them coming out with a victory. I think the Buccaneers are a little bit too banged up right now. Even though they kind of mopped the floor with the Eagles, my Eagles a little bit, I still see them. I still see the Rams winning. I see the Rams winning this one.
Paul?
Well, Nick, there must be something in the air in the UK, because I too had a dream, and it was that Jimmy G is going to beat Rodgers, he's going to beat Brady, and then he's going to beat Mahomes, and Scott's going to be crying. So purely on that one, I think the Buccaneers are going to win. And I know Dion's probably thinking I'm drinking too much as well, but I just thought I'd throw that in there.
We always drink too much tea, Paul. You know that, obviously. Might have a gallon of whiskey in it, but we drink far too much tea. Scott?
I like the Rams. I think the defense, the Buccaneers, they've lost Godwin. They've lost Antonio Brown. The Eagles, that game, if Jalen Hurts could have done anything instead of just kept giving the ball back to Tampa Bay, that would have been a closer game than it was. I like the Rams, Stafford with Kupp and OBJ on offense. I think they can get enough done to score enough points. And that defensive line, like Carl had mentioned, and it's getting banged up on the front there. Tom Brady, he can't escape out of there. So the Eagles' defense was able to get to him. They were able to harass him. Yeah, I like the Rams in the upset.
Okay. Brad?
Yeah, I don't want to be predictable here, but yeah, Rams. I think definitely it's going to be this defensive upset. I think really that's going to be the key here, because yeah, I think Brady's all line's going to be banged up. The Bucs have got injuries left, right, and centre. I just think it's just a bridge too far for them in this. So I've actually gone for the Rams in this. I think if Stafford has a decent game, I think I think it's going to be Rams all the way for this, I think.
Dion?
Come on. Sorry, couldn't get the mute off. Quickly, I'll say this. I want the Rams to win because I want no parts of Tom Brady. May I remind you, if any of you guys watched The Shot with LeBron James, if you haven't heard of it, go on HBO Max. Okay, so Paul, you're shaking your head. Tom Brady went on there and plainly stated, "You passed on me for this motherfucker? Okay, I'm going to show you. We passed on Tom Brady for Jimmy Garoppolo. I want no parts of Tom Brady as he's angry and or upset. Why? Because he will come in and punch his so-called understudy straight in the mouth and laugh in his face as he watches him bleed on the ground. Tom Brady is a killer, okay? There's very few people in this world that play sports that have a killer instinct. Brady is one of them. I want no parts of that matchup. He will shit on Jimmy Garoppolo and make him look horrid. So I want the Rams to win strictly for that. And the other thing is Kyle makes Sean McVay his bitch on a consistent basis. So it just makes it easier for us if the Rams go in. And then plus think about it like this. We go into LA, we beat the Rams. We just stay there and hang out in LA. Why? Because we're at the Super Bowl already. Makes life easier. One other thing I wanted to address. My homie to go. Attitude reflects leadership. Wonder what it was like playing there that made him feel that way. Let me explain something to you. My wife uses that term very, very often. She does. Attitude reflects leadership. But in this case, that term does not apply. And I'll tell you exactly why. What we reflected was we waited on you for years and you couldn't get on the field. But we kept you because the head coach had some kind of love affair and saw something inside of you. So there was an appreciation for the skills that you had that we never really got to see. Nothing ever materialized. So don't you go out there blaming our coaching staff and the people in the building for his slick comments and his idiotic mouth. So don't talk about my organization being a bad organization when that idiot said what he said on his own. I don't care that he's playing for you and that he's doing great. At the end of the day, you're a man. What I was taught when I was growing up is you own your mistakes and you own any decision that you make. You make your decisions, no one else. If you go rob a store and you get caught and you go to jail, you go to jail because you made the choice to rob that store. No one else told you to. No one else forced you to. You were not coerced. He was not coerced in any way. And we treated him damn good while he was here. So I will not let anyone put slander on our organization by stating that maybe it was us instead of him. That was him. He's a grown man. He knew what the hell he said. That is his fault and his alone. Ryan, your choice.
Dion, you stole my damn thunder again. Yeah, I'm sorry about my daughter's in the background with her tablets. I hope you guys can hear me better. So, yeah, you're so right, Dion. I was saying the same thing because they stay there. If Rams win and we win against the Packers, we win against the Rams, we beat them, we stay there for the Super Bowl. So there's no traveling. Because it's all in the same stadium. So, yeah, I got the Rams in it. I don't like Tom Brady, so I got the Rams.
Well, it is SoFi South, as we always know when the Niners play there. And if I'd have known, Dion, you were going to do one of your little rants, I'd have put your special headline up, Dion's Rant long form. But I couldn't find it quick enough for when you started speaking.
Next season, I'll do something for Dion if he has another rant.
I'm sorry, I had to address that because I don't like people talking ill on our franchise for one man's, idiotic comment. That's just me.
2 games left, second to last. Always leave the best to last. Bengals, Titans. Now, this does interest me, this game. And I've loved watching the Bengals, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Mixon. I think the Bengals defense is a bit suspect. And if Derrick Henry is 80% Derrick Henry, then I think the Bengals are going to have a problem. But I'm still going to go better. For me, it's the Bengals, just because I love watching Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and obviously you've got the other receivers. So I am going to go the Bengals, and somehow that defense will stop Derrick Henry. So Bengals for me. And they're not going to bungle because they didn't bungle last week. So they're not going to bungle this week. Carl.
I really want the Bengals to win this, but as you said, their defense is completely banged up. They've got the 20th ranked O-line in the NFL. That's not going to cut it in the playoffs. With Tennessee having their bye, they'll come back into the fold now. They should be refreshed and ready to go. But there are 2 question marks I've got for this game. First of all, with the King returning, Derrick Henry. According to Ian Rappaport, I saw a tweet out this morning. Derrick Henry has actually got a metal plate and 5 screws in his foot that got healed. Now, I'm no doctor, and I've never had that sort of injury before. Joe, I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this before when you was playing at all. That would concern me because that may have some discomfort when you're trying to run with the ball. And secondly, for the entire of the Tennessee offense and defense, a little bit of rust could come into it. If this team comes out slow, plays sloppy, and I'll also say with Green Bay as well when they play the 49ers, they come out slow and sloppy, the Bengals have to bounce on that at all costs. I think Tennessee will get the job done, but I am not over at all confident on the pick at all. This is a 50-50 coin toss for me, but I'm going to take Tennessee to win it just because it's at home.
Joe, what do you think?
I think if you would have asked me 8 weeks ago, I would have said the Titans win this game in a lock. And I would go away from that 50-50 8 weeks ago. If you ask me today, I'm more in Carl's bucket, where I think it's a 50-50 game, and I think it's going to come down to how much this team has game planned this week for King Henry. Because I think if they rely too much on Derrick Henry and their game plan has been geared on it, and he does not come out and run as effectively as we know he can, I think they will have missed out on an opportunity to be a more well-rounded offense that they can be. You know, this Titans team has beat most of the teams that you'd think they either should have beat or maybe not even could have beat. In, you know, you look up and down their schedule and you look at their wins, you know, beating the Chiefs, beating the Bills, you know, winning games that, you know, beating the Rams, games that they really, you know, maybe you wouldn't think they were going to win, but they've also lost some games that they should have won. You know, they lost to the Jets. They lost to the Texans. They struggled with the Texans last week. And you look at what the trajectory that the Bengals are going. I'm a big momentum guy, and I think a lot of NFL teams play on momentum. And I think it's a 50-50 game, and I'm going to actually go with the Bengals in this one because I think Tennessee might fall flat on their face with this Derrick Henry sort of philosophy or preparation that they may have overcompensated for this week, thinking he was going to be 100%. And I'd say that the Bengals are going to edge this Titans team out in what is, I totally agree with Carl, it's a 50-50 toss-up, but I'm going to give it to the Bengals based on what the Bengals have done in the last several weeks versus what the Titans have done in the last because they should have been playing that game against the Texans all out because the number one seed was on the line, and the fact of getting Derrick Henry back, you know, was should have been playing heavily in their game plan of just putting the Texans away. And I don't think they played as well against the Texans as they should have. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the momentum of the Bengals and see if Joe Burrow can, you know, kind of be the quarterback of the future that they think he can be.
So the other thing as well, Joe, just branching off on a tangent quickly, this smacks of like when Seattle Russell, I can't even say it, Russell Wilson, I can't even speak his name, Russell Wilson back early, and look how that went. And that could be the same scenario because they were desperate to get him back. It backfired. It's it's a close one, and as you say, you don't know what Derrick Henry's going to turn up. And as Carl said as well, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but cold may affect that injury and the screws.
I don't think the weather is going to affect it. I think it's going to be like 49 degrees over there in Nashville. So I don't think the weather's going to be
positively toasty. It's -1 in my garage, but anyway, Brad, what say you?
Do you know what? I feel like I'm just copying Joe on this one, but I'm a big momentum guy. I think bye weeks can have a funny effect on teams, can't they? Where they get a little bit, look at us, you know, we're the one seed. We've got the bye week. Let's just chill, and we've got the home game next. And I just think the way the Bengals have been playing, and especially from what we saw from them against the Chiefs just a few weeks ago, the momentum was really kind of building up there. And I just see, I don't know, I think Joe Burrow is just playing a little bit more confident at the moment. And the fact that you've got Jamar Chase saying recently that he doesn't believe he can be stopped, that really goes a long way. And especially we're talking about what Joe was saying about confidence in players and stuff. And you can't buy that level of confidence sometimes. And I just think the Bengals will edge it just purely down to the momentum.
It's gonna be an interesting game. Scott.
I'm gonna lean Tennessee. They're playing at home. They're rested. The Bengals defense is suspect to me. They can be had, and outside of Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, I feel like their offense isn't as potent. The Titans getting Derrick Henry back, even if he's not 100%, hell, 80% Derrick Henry is still better than 90% of the running backs in the league. They're playing at home. I think Tennessee gets it done. I'll pick them.
Paul?
It's a strange one, this one for me, because listening to Joe today, and he's been awesome. One of the people who got me into the NFL is a Titans fan, and I'm in a group chat with a Titans fan, a Cowboys fan, and myself. So you can imagine last weekend's group chat was great for me. And he was supporting the 49ers last week. So for me, I want the Titans to win. I don't watch too much of the AFC. I focus purely on the Niners, but I think Titans are going to win this one for me.
Okay. Deal.
I will go ahead and I will take the Bengals. I'm going to make my point, and I'm going to make it real easy. We got 2 rings because Cincinnati. I'd love to see Cincinnati again in the Super Bowl, because in 1982, we won the Super Bowl. And in 1989, we won the Super Bowl against none other than the Cincinnati Bengals. So Cincinnati, by all means, please win the AFC. We'll be waiting with open arms.
Oh, I don't know. Ryan.
Love you, Dion. Love you, man. I just saw on Twitter, happy birthday to George Seifert. To all 49er fans. Happy birthday, George. And yes, I got the Bengals.
Okay. Now it is the game of the week. Well, it certainly is for 49er fans. I know Brad's got to get up out of here. Brad, game of the week, America's game of the week, the world's game of the week. This will depend whether you get invited back on again or not. 49ers Green Bay. Before you get up out of here. Choose.
It's a head and heart moment, this, because I've had some real good interactions with 49ers fans, especially at the Super Bowl in Miami. It was fantastic. They were great fans. I wish them well in this game. I really do. And I really hope that you guys beat Rodgers. Really beat him. Not just like beat him just by a few points, but really beat him. But Green Bay this year has been phenomenal. And they've been really consistently phenomenal as well. And breaking that kind of run is going to be quite difficult for the 49ers. Can Jimmy G do it? Can he do it? I hope he can. I really do hope he can. But I think my head's saying it's got to be the Packers. Sorry.
I admire your honesty, and it's been really great having you on. The door is that way. Brad, before you get up out of here, because I know you got to go, let everyone know where they can follow you on Twitter and your podcast and all that jazz. Let them know where they can get hold of you before you jump off.
Yeah, no problem. On Twitter, it's at BritChiefUK, and I actually work for Arrowhead Pride. I do a podcast on there, which is the Great British Chief Show. You can find it on Spotify and everything like that. So give it a listen. It's just 2 guys from the UK talking about the Chiefs, having a good laugh as well. It's like almost like a pub environment, so it's good fun. But appreciate being on, and it's been great speaking with Joe Valerio today, because seeing some of the highlights, I had a look at them again this week, not like this week building up to it. And then seeing that Nick Allegretti was getting a touchdown as well, it just and with the same number jersey as well, it just felt as though, you know what, this all the planets are aligning now. It means that we're all going to be okay moving forward for this Chiefs team in the playoffs.
Well, thank you, Brad. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you, following you, and really excited to have building this relationship. And let's do it for your pod. Bring me up. Hit me up. Happy to jump on with you and chop it up a little bit. So I'm glad we're building this relationship. This is awesome. So thank you for being such a great fan. And I hope we can do this again real soon.
For sure. Thanks for the stories and everything. It's been brilliant. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Brad, take care of yourself. Good luck to your Chiefs tonight. But as I said, my dream is the Bills.
You too to the 49ers. Good luck with 49ers. I really hope you do one over Rodgers. I really do.
And Brad, if you want to catch some more of those highlights and things, I launched a YouTube channel this week.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of videos I had and put together. So tell your folks to subscribe. I'm going to keep it vibrant and keep it coming with some inspirational talks and videos and things like that. So
will do.
Keep it coming. I'd love to get some subscribers and get that going.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do what I can, Joe.
Awesome.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Good to see you, Brad. Take care.
Speak to you again soon. Cheers.
See ya.
Cheers. Okay, Carl. Last game of the week. America's game of the week. The Cheeseheads versus the Bully Boy 49ers. Who have you got?
Move to Scott first because I've got to do something quickly. Give me 2 minutes.
Oh, dear. Scott, the floor is yours, apparently.
I look at Aaron Rodgers versus Jimmy G, and I just can't pick against Aaron Rodgers. I just can't do it. I picked y'all, but it seems like whenever I pick you, you lose, or you think I'm like the kiss of death. So I would love to see the 49ers win this game. I'm not rooting against them, but to me, Aaron Rodgers has missed out on the Super Bowl the last couple of years. He's the MVP. Their defense, I know the 49ers had kind of went in there that game against Dallas. But if Dak and them would have done anything for more than a half a quarter in that game, I think they could have pulled that out. So, yeah, I just think you got to go with Aaron Rodgers this go around. I think this is kind of his year. So, not to say that I don't think you don't have a chance. I wouldn't be surprised if you all pull the upset and get the win. But yeah, I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers.
Funny thing is, you could have taken Aaron Rodgers' name out and put Dak Prescott's into what you just said, like you said last week. And the Niners went in there.
Dak Prescott aren't.
The Niners went into Jerry's world, and the over-under of Jerry sucking a lemon was definitely over last week, and it was hilarious. And honestly, the funniest thing was that two things. The punter hitting the scoreboard was hilarious, and I've always thought, how come in domes kicks don't hit scoreboards? Because I've never seen that in all the years I've watched it, and that happened, and then I don't know what you want to call it at the end, where they tried to spot the ball and they couldn't spot the ball. And that's a real quirk of the NFL, that the referee or the line judge, whoever, has to touch the ball before they spot it. I thought that was hilarious. And
I'd say with the scoreboard thing is usually you don't have that big a scoreboard hanging in the middle of the stadium. It's usually on the end or something. But yeah, no, they.
It's usually on the ends on the outside of the stadiums, on the outside.
Atlanta's got that thing in the center as well, hasn't it? But I've never ever seen a scoreboard hit.
I didn't get to watch really any of that game. I was out at Arrowhead, I was tailgating, and then they were showing bits and pieces in the stadium there before the game started, before they got the pregame stuff going on. But yeah, I didn't really get to watch much of that. I just saw bits and pieces that they were showing on the scoreboard there at the stadium, and then saw the final score. So
it was, to me, being a Niners fan, it was a roller coaster. And to be honest, I don't think it could have happened to two nicer people in Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy, if I'm honest. And you can add Dak Prescott into it. I thought it was hilarious. Yeah, it was good. Apparently, Carl's got something he wants to show. He's just texted me and said he's ready. So I don't know whether he's got a fancy dress moment or what he's doing. So all eyes are on you, Carl.
Howdy.
Looks like Richard Petty.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's get something straight for a second. The 49ers winning last week was a fantastic win. Watching the Cowboys lose is always great for everybody. But Jimmy Garoppolo, look, Nick, I've tried to defend with you about Jimmy G throughout most of this season, okay? And doing this live stream on your channel last week, which I thank you, by the way, watching Jimmy play was very uncomfortable for me. There were so many plays in that game where he missed receivers wide open. You look at in the first quarter when he missed a throw for George Kittle if Elijah Mitchell picked up his blocker. In the third quarter, 1:46 to go, he missed a wide open Brandon Ayuk. That's a straight first down and a red zone opportunity. And then Dion shaking his head already. And then the back-breaking interception where we overthrew Trent Sherfield. That's a simple no-no. Those are the sort of plays and mistakes that cost the team a run to the Super Bowl. And what I saw from that was it's really concerning against the Cowboys, very, very luckily, because Mike McCarthy is not a very good coach and he doesn't prepare his team for the way situationally. Doesn't do that at all. You can't do that against Green Bay. You can't do that against Aaron Rodgers because he will punish you for it. As much as we'd like to think of him as the human being, as being the total, part of my term of phrase here, Joe, an absolute arsehat, but the athlete of Aaron Rodgers is simply unquestionable. He is outstanding. You can't give him anything to work with. This game for the Niners, you are going to have to rely so much on the running game and the defense. Jimmy G cannot afford to make mistakes in this game because it will be cost-worthy. And that's a bit why I am extremely nervous about. I can see the Niners winning. I can see the Niners winning, but I can also see Jimmy G screwing it up for everybody else. On that basis alone, I'm taking Green Bay by a field goal.
Can I just say very quickly, Dion, before you jump in, because I know you got to go, I am looking for a new co-host for Shank Club NFL as of now. Carl, you've been revoked. Dion, I know you got to jump out for some breakfast, so obviously hit us with your quick prediction.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys some numbers, and I'm going to this is exactly how we win this game. 726 to 290. Over the most recent current appearances in the playoffs for the 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers, those are the rushing numbers. The 49ers have rushed for 726 yards. The Green Bay Packers have rushed for 290 yards. We ran for 9 touchdowns. Green Bay has only ran for 3, 1 in each of our appearances. That is a gaping hole of 436 yards and 6 touchdowns. Run the damn ball. That's all you got to do. It's that easy. Don't let Jimmy throw the ball. Carl just said why you don't want him to throw the ball. It's very obvious. Run the ball, we win the game. If this becomes a situation where we're going to have a shootout between Jimmy G and Aaron Rodgers, we lose. I have no faith that Jimmy Garoppolo can win a shootout with Aaron Rodgers. So, for me, 49ers win. It's simple. I gave you the numbers. This is not disputable. These are facts. Run the ball. It's that easy. It's not hard. All you have to do is give it to Elijah or give it to Debo. Hell, if you want to throw Jeff Wilson Jr. in there for a mix-up, give it to him too. I don't care if you put Trey Lance in the backfield, damn it. Run the ball. That's all you must do, and you can win this game. If you put the game in Jimmy Garoppolo's hands, I am so sorry, Nick, but we will be gone. We will be sitting at home watching everything from the sidelines. That is me. I appreciate everyone on here. Nice to meet you, Joe. You are a legend for catching those touchdown passes. And you're a legend amongst offensive linemen for that matter. Because for old linemen to catch TD, it ain't easy, man. Y'all don't get many opportunities and chances to report as eligible. So, yeah, legend amongst offensive linemen, a legend in my mind. I appreciate, even have the chance to meet you. Nick, thank you so much again for introducing me to another legend. All of you guys, I appreciate everyone. Scott, good luck. And I seriously mean that. Very, very good luck to you, brother. That's going to be a hell of a task. That Bills defense is monstrous. And Carl, you got to give me a little more with the cowboy hat, man. I need a little Southern twang out that cowboy hat. I'm sure Joe was expecting a little Southernness in the cowboy hat, but it worked out well.
It was
I unfortunately there is something missing off that actual outfit, and that is a plastic cigar. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I'm missing. But hey ho, I'll get round to that.
There you go. Hey, love and appreciate you guys, man. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Dion.
Awesome to meet you, my friend. Take care. Talk soon.
Ryan, Niners.
Well, you know who I'm picking already, but I'll give my score protection. You already know that. But yeah. Like I always say on all my games, and I give my predictions. If we have a 2-touchdown lead with 5 minutes left, we have the ball, I'm confident. But I know if Jimmy G's out there, do you feel confident enough to give him the ball, to throw that ball? But we got to run the ball like Dion says. Run the damn ball. That's all we need to do. Kill that clock. The clock will be their enemy, not us. Because that's the way I always put it. So basically, that's where I'm at. And I'm hoping we keep Aaron Rodgers and the Packers to at least 14 points. I'm hoping for that. That's what I'm hoping for. So 28-14 is my final.
Joe.
Well, I'm going to go. I talked earlier about momentum, and I'm actually I think the 49ers are going to do a lot like they did against the Cowboys, and I think they're going to win this thing at the end. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to go into this game way too overconfident. I think he was probably thinking, and I think the Packers organization, coaches start looking at games early, guys. I just give you a little inside baseball there, even though we're talking about football. Coaches start looking at things early. They have to. They don't have that much time. There's only 24 hours in a day, and you've got 5, 6, 7 days to prepare for a game, depending on where it falls. And you've got to spend a lot of your time looking at teams. And you've got to, when you're in the playoffs, you got to look at both sides. Say, okay, if we're lucky enough to win this game and we're going to play these two teams, we got to look. And I know for a fact that the Packers organization probably spent 70% of their time looking at the Cowboys and 30% looking at the 49ers, just based on the fact of who was playing, right? Everybody's thinking Dak's going to come out and do his thing. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott had half the year that they thought he was going to have. And I think the Packers organization probably looked past the 49ers at this point. They had a bye week, so they had a little bit of extra time, but I know for a fact that they probably spent a lot more time looking at the Dallas game plan than they did the 49ers. And I think that's what's going to come back to bite them. I think Aaron Rodgers is probably thinking, oh man, we got a little bit of a respite here on a team that, you've got a quarterback who, I know there's still a lot of talk of what's it going to be for Jimmy, right? I think Jimmy has a lot to gain by playing an incredibly big game. Whether he's the quarterback for the 49ers next year, I know there's a little bit of a controversy brewing and growing there. But I think he is going to play this game to be the 49ers quarterback. Regardless of what the talk has been with the fans, that whether he was the guy or not, I think the 49ers are going to shock. I think it's going to be the shock of the week. Because it's a big underdog, 6-point Vegas line. That's big, but I think they're going to win this game by a field goal at the end of the game because the Packers will have overlooked this team, and the 49ers have a lot more to gain than the Packers do to lose. And I think that alone gives them the momentum to go in and win this game and shock the Packers at Lambeau Field, and the fact that Aaron Rodgers is going to be looking past this team. That's how I think it's going to go down.
And I promise you, everyone that's watching, I did not pay Joe to say.
No, I'm not homering it.
Right.
Oh, Paul, follow that if you can.
To be fair, Joe was saying everything I was thinking. It was like he was looking at my notes, Nick.
I read your diary, Paul. You got to stop posting your diary online. You got to stop.
What I will say, Nick, Carl invited me on the Watch Along show last week. My other half doesn't fully understand football. She doesn't understand why we do what we do. So last Sunday, I said, my friend Carl's invited us to watch along with a game. She was like, nah. When we were 23-7 up, I was regretting that decision. And then when the table started turning, I will share a video on Twitter, gentlemen. It's a Dallas Cowboy fan parody of a guy shouting at the telly and he's going through all the emotions. And my other half tweeted that and said, that was you last week. She said, I don't know who you were talking to. I don't know who you were shouting at the telly. She said, you're too emotionally invested. And I said, well, the good news is we're not on next Sunday, but we're playing at 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night. So hence why I'm in the bedroom tonight, because I have the front room for tonight's game. I'm not going to bore you with my take. I'm going for the 49ers. I think we're going to win. We're in the playoffs. Of course, I'm going to go with the 49ers. I just wanted to say, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to have you on. And you've went for the 49ers, so you're more than welcome to come back on.
How can you not? You know, they're football royalty, and I've got a big place in my heart for that organization, that team, based on my history with Joe, growing up and watching, you know, and the stories of the John Candy incident, you know, the catch, the rivalry they had with the hated Cowboys. Like, how can you not love that organization? And you know, it's just I think they're football royalty. So I'm really excited about where they're going. They've got a lot to build on. And I think, like I said, I'm ready for that. I'm ready for them to win this game, and I think that would be fantastic to see them back in the NFC Championship, where an organization like that belongs. So I think they've got a lot of momentum going.
Now, this is my take, which obviously is going to be 49ers, obviously, because, you know, I'm dressed in the stuff. I agree with you, Joe. Momentum does have a lot. And I think the Niners' momentum started with the LA Rams game where we took them apart. And then obviously last week against Dallas. And yes, it was, as probably every 49er fan, I was sitting there comfortably. And then Jimmy G threw that pick. And he does like to throw a pick. Even at 23-7, I'm sitting there thinking, this is easy. This is what football, I mean, this is easy. It's not a problem. We're going to go on and get 35, 40 points. And then Jimmy G does what Jimmy G does. And he was nowhere near as bad as he was in the Titans game. When I wanted him benched. I think it was a Titans game. Could have been the Titans. Anyway, the game where I was screaming for him to be benched on Twitter and got very upset. I think the Niners win. I think that Green Bay are going to overlook them. Momentum, as you say, is a massive thing. And I think the Niners run the ball, keep Jimmy to under 20 passes, 20 attempts, run the ball, use Debo, use Juice, whatever. And I honestly think Matt LaFleur won't have the game plan to stop the Niners in any way, shape or form. I just think Jimmy G will do what Aaron Rodgers did. And bearing in mind, when we played Green Bay in week 3, this was a totally different team and we lost by 3 points. I can see the reverse happening. And Jimmy G will lead us down the field in the 2-minute offense. Robbie Gould, walk-off, field goal. And that I am going to wake people up if that happens in my house tonight. Because I tempered it last week, but I've got a feeling this is going to be like the New Orleans playoff game. And when the catch 3 happened and I screamed, they ain't coming back from that. They ain't coming back from that. The dog went nuts. Everyone got up and started berating me, but I didn't care because I was on the floor going like that and going nuts and throwing my hat in the air. So I think that's going to happen. I think it's Niners by 3. Jimmy G leads us down the field and Rodgers is going to get a discount double check and an Aaron Rodgers reign all to himself. Now, before we get up out of here, there was a question, Joe, that someone wanted to ask you from a little while ago. So if you would just answer this. Joe, can you speak to what it's like to rehab an injury in the NFL and where a player is at when he is ready?
That's a really good question because it's a physical game and every player knows it's not It's not if, it's when, right? It just based on you pick any position, it's going to happen. At some point, your body's going to break down. You're going to get yourself caught in an unusual position, and you're going to have to, you're going to have to come back from an injury. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, no matter, like I said, no matter what position you play. Everybody was talking about, the Buccaneers, Tristan Wirfs. Who would have thought, a guy that with that much physical prowess, next thing you know, somebody rolls up on him on something he can't even control, and next thing you know, he's missing, the divisional round of the playoffs in his second year. So, it can happen to everybody, and so rehab is, there's a fine line and a fine balance in the NFL locker room and in an organization. It's get you back on the field as fast as you can because you're an asset. Okay, especially if you're a key starter, key position, that's integral to someone's game plan. Okay, but you also have to take the long view and say, if we rush this player back too fast, we're not going to have him for the future, right? So that is the art. The science is what the injury tells you, right? And says, okay, historically, if you have a torn ACL or if you fracture a bone or you get a hamstring pull, like they know that they've gotten so good at the law of large numbers of saying, okay, I know how long it takes to get a hamstring back and not be, walking on that fine line where if we bring this player back too soon, he's going to blow his career and we're going to lose that asset versus let's get him back so that we can have him out on the field as an asset. So they kind of have a lot of data around those types of injuries. And so as a player, you get a little nervous. There's maybe, I don't know, if you 32 teams, 53 guys on a roster, 30 times 50, 1,500, right? Round numbers, NFL players. There's about half of them in the NFL locker room that if they got hurt, the organization says, all right, we're not going to cut this guy because he's hurt. Like there's, if Tom Brady fractures his pinky, there you go. Pissing in the cornflakes. If a player gets hurt, like of that caliber, they know that their job is not in jeopardy. The other half mentally is playing a lot of mental gymnastics and saying, if I don't get back out on the field, somebody faster, bigger, stronger is going to take my spot, and I'm going to become. You've all heard the Wally Pipp story, right? Of Lou Gehrig, right? Like Lou Gehrig, the famous baseball player who had the string of for the New York Yankees of playing until Cal Ripken broke the record, the straight number of games, and it was all because this first baseman named Wally Pipp said, "Nah, you know what? I don't feel like playing today." And what happened? Lou Gehrig came in, took his spot, and never lost it. You never heard of Wally Pipp ever again, and Lou Gehrig became one of the greatest baseball players of all time. So nobody wants to be Wally Pipp. And I think that plays on the mind of a lot of players because they want to get back out there because they know, like I said, not to over-exaggerate it, but somebody bigger, faster, stronger is coming along to take your spot because it's uber competitive, guys. And so, I know that was a long-winded answer, which I've been given a lot of today, but, love to talk. It's getting injured and getting rehabbed is a very, 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 very fine balance and a mixture of science and art, depending on where an organization is going. Something happens toward the end of a season, and you think it's the team's chance to get to the Super Bowl. Maybe you push a Derrick Henry back a little faster than he should. Than if he would have gotten hurt at the beginning of the season. Like, well, let's see how the season plays out and how fast we got to rush him back. The Titans know it's crunch time. And Derrick Henry knows it's crunch time, and you only get this many opportunities to be, in the final 8. So, that's it. Like it's the art and science, and players' minds go all over the place because they really just want to be out there playing, but they also know that they have a long career. Hopefully, if they have to, if they could end if they rush it too fast. Hope that answered your question.
It is a very fine line, as you say, and the bigger the star player, the quicker they want the organisation want that player back, so they'll try whatever they can to obviously get him back. Right, that just about does it. Joe, you did say you do 90 minutes. You've done double that, so I really appreciate you. I've had a lot of fun It's been brilliant.
This was awesome.
We're just going to go round the horn very, very quickly. Carl, let everyone know where they can find you, your Twitter handle, your YouTube, and all that jazz.
Yep, so you can find me on Twitter at TFIBUK20. Our YouTube channel is 2 Feet and Bounds. We cover all 32 teams of the NFL. We're on all major podcast platforms as well, on iTunes and Spotify and so on. Good luck to all the teams this weekend in the divisional round, especially the Niners. Hopefully you do knock off Aaron Rodgers. And just a little thing as well, we stopped doing live streaming for Sunday night games. It's just too difficult over here in the UK. Trying to do it at 20 past 1 in the morning every weekend, it was just an absolute nightmare. But me and Freddie have had a discussion, and we are going to be doing the live watch-alongs for the divisional round. All 4 games will be on our channel. So we've got Bengals Titans tonight, which me and Freddie will be doing, and then the Niners Packers game, which I will be doing. And I wouldn't mind having a second person come on to actually help do the broadcasting. And then we got the other 2 games tomorrow night, including the Chiefs Bills game, which to me is the best game on paper by far. So yeah, that's our channel, and hit us up if you would like your say during the games.
I will be too busy either crying into my hands or waking the house up to join, unfortunately. Joe, as I say, it's been an absolute pleasure. Let everyone know where they can find you on Twitter, what your new YouTube channel is, etc., and what else you're doing.
Yeah, sure, Nick. Thank you. Yeah, my Twitter handle is at Joe Valerio 73. That's where you can find me on Twitter. It's where I spend most of my time, interacting on social media. I do, because of work, have a vibrant LinkedIn, page. But I'm going to be tweeting out the YouTube channel here as soon as we're done recording with the show. I'll put it in my Twitter feed, and it'll have the link there. I'm going to post some inspirational stories, videos, fun things. Want to get some of these stories out there and put them into a more formalized format, and let people, whether it's somebody as individual or a business person, anybody that wants to maybe pick up a lesson that I've learned through life or football, I'll throw that out there. It's going to be Joe Valerio Lessons from the Gridiron, and that'll be the title of the YouTube page, and then it'll have a link, and you can Google that. And it's got Joe Montana's all over it. Got lots of clips with Joe and us interacting. There's one interview where it was done by Stuart Scott from ESPN, where they interviewed Joe about me and his confidence in me being able to catch balls from him and be on the other side of his thing. So so that'll be out there, and that's where you can find me. So I can't thank you all enough for allowing me the opportunity to share all this with you and your listeners and your fans, and getting to meet you and spending time. I hope, and sincerely hope, we can do this again. And please hit me up anytime, whether it's through a direct message on Twitter, or through the Gmail. You got my email now, whatever, however, LinkedIn, whatever, through YouTube, whatever. Just let's connect. Let's stay connected, because that's what the world's all about, and that's what makes the world go round, is the great people in it. So thanks for having me, and best of luck to all your teams. And I'm looking forward to this football season really coming to a crescendo.
Definitely. Promise me 2 things, Joe. If you come to London and we meet up, can you bring one of those touchdown balls so I can touch?
All right, I'll see if they'll let it. There you go. I'll see if they let it through customs.
Even just for you to hold it and for me to glare at it would be an honor. And please come back. Let's do something again. Maybe if the Niners and Chiefs end up in the Super Bowl, we'll do a Super Bowl or divisional. A NFC, AFC championship game show, whatever. It's been a real honor and a pleasure. I really appreciate you, Joe.
Pleasure's all mine.
And I am going to subscribe to your channel. So when you put it out on Twitter, I will go over to YouTube just so I can see you and Joe kicking it back. As you know, Joe is my number 1 all time. And very quickly, another one that is now on Twitter, which is hilarious, is my 2nd all time ever favorite player, Dick Butkus. Follow Dick Butkus. He's hilarious, and he's giving it to Green Bay over this Niners game, and it's hilarious. He's just been verified.
Yeah.
And I stumbled, someone retweeted him, like, Dick Butkus, jeez, I got to follow. And he's hilarious. I retweeted some of his Packers slander earlier, so that's been really good. Scott, we're getting out of it. Let everyone know where they can find you, your podcast and all that.
Yep, you can find us Chiefs Kingdom Live on all social media. You can find us on Twitter. I got the handle right there below in the name bar. Just really good talking with you all, seeing y'all again. Nick, Carl, Paul, Ryan, Joe, good to see you again, man. Big game for the Chiefs. I'm really looking forward to being at Arrowhead. This is going to be an intense game, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. So good luck to your Niners. I know I picked against you again, but I'm hoping you win. I'm not trying to be a hater and rain on your parade at all. I'd be happy to see those guys take them down and take care of business. And hopefully we're talking about our teams winning again next week.
Let's hope so. Paul, before you get out of here, let everyone know where they can follow you and find you.
I just wanted to share with Joe before I left. I'm 41, Joe, and I've never played football before. And tomorrow, I'm going to try out for my local flag team. So your story earlier of channeling when Joe was pumping the ball, I will be thinking of that moment, and I will hit you up on Twitter and let you know how it gets on.
There you go. Keep those thumbs in. Keep those thumbs in when the ball's coming. Keep your eye on it. Keep those thumbs in. Keep your elbows as tight as you can.
And I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. As Scott said earlier, I'm on Paul_Hope10, which is my personal Twitter account. I'm part of the 49er Faithful UK. Nick's been good enough to retweet us and invite me on the show. I'm fairly new to all this. I normally do a podcast, which you don't see my face. So doing the live YouTube stuff is a bit of a difference. But thanks again, Nick. And thanks again, everyone. And let's go Niners.
Ryan, the last word is yours.
Well, my name is Ryan. You can find me at JMSY as Joe Montana Steve Young, 16-8 their numbers. And you can find me and my brothers on our YouTube channel, our brand new YouTube channel. We actually upgraded our YouTube, our page, and our logo at Always Faithful 24/7. My brothers, Lawrence, Mark, Jizzle, and Troy. And yes, Troy, I saw you in the comments. Nice seeing you again, brother. So, yeah, we're up to 40 subscribers now. We're climbing. I'm glad about. So, I thank you very much for inviting me in, Nick. Thanks, man. Thank you, guys.
As ever, it's always a pleasure to have all you guys on. Even bigger pleasure having Joe on. Joe, you've been an absolute star. I can't thank you enough. I always kind of get starstruck with these kind of interviews, and to see you with Jeff at the beginning, it was a bit of a sneaky play on my part, but I wanted just to share that moment, or you to share a moment, because obviously I guess you hadn't spoken for a while.
Been a long time.
That made the show for me, seeing your face and then seeing his face, and so it was good. It was good. And as I say, Jeff's a friend of the show. Hopefully you're a friend of the show. We can get you back on.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
And yeah, everyone out there, stay safe. Enjoy the games. Let's hope that we talk Chiefs and Niners next week. We need a discount double check on Aaron Rodgers eating some Lambeau turf in the frozen tundra. My name's Nick. Thank you to Dion. Thank you to Carl, Joe, Mr. Smug, Paul, Ryan, everyone in the comments. I appreciate every one of you. We'll be back this time next week, win or lose for the Niners. Everyone take care. Have a good week. Enjoy the games. This is Shank Club NFL. We are out.